Hello and welcome. We are Achievement Hunting 101, the podcast that, sorry, this action can't be performed at this time. Try again later. Error 801511103. Boo.
Oh, man.
Boo. Too soon?
Hits real close. That hits real close.
This is episode/level 191.
Kenny, your voice got very deep.
Oh, sorry.
He got into
My
it.
name is KooshMoose, aka Nate. I'm not Fufu, and I am a Chievaholic. Kenny, Fufu Kenny Poof, was not able to join us this evening, so please allow me to introduce our other two panelists for the evening. Our first panelist wants to boost Lost Planet Extreme Condition and Viva Pinata Trouble in Paradise. It's Big L.
Hello, KooshMoose.
Are you aware that you are telling people that you want to boost those games?
I want to boost every game. I want to use console commands. I want to hack. Oh, wait, no, not that one. But, yeah.
It sounded like you were starting a song parody about less than, above board ways to get achievements. I think that might be something you need to return to.
I want to play every rat. I want to boost with my cat. Yeah, I could make it happen.
All right.
And lastly, but not leastly, we have the gamer with the third highest TA in the state of New York, but is still the undisputed TA difference champion in puzzle game in the state of New York, Matrarch, a.k.a. the Puzzle Master.
And I have you to thank, because every week you're going to find some puzzle game I didn't realize was on sale. And I'm going to add it to my backlog and eventually get that sweet TAD. So thank you, Koosh. Thank you for helping me secure that number one spot.
You're welcome. That's my job.
So, not only are you a Chievaholic, you are a Chivo dealer.
Maybe. Well, if you want to stay in business.
one informs the other.
These games aren't going to buy themselves for me. I have to go out and make the money.
You're opening tabs for others now.
So let's start off the way we usually do these days with our topic of discussion. We ask these topics in the patron channel of the the AH101 Discord server. And we read back our patrons' answers along with our own. Today's topic of discussion was asked and sent in to us by Jblacq. And he says, RTDL has been trying to get me to go back and play my 360 games. The non-back compat games are the hardest ones for me to go back to due to long load times and in some cases having to find the disc. What is holding you back from playing/completing your 360 games? Who wants to go first?
I'm going to go first. Okay, wait.
Oh, right.
Wait.
Matrarch said it first.
Who said it
first?
first?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Michelle, go.
I'll cede the floor to you because I have a story to tell.
Oh,
so
no.
I'm gonna tell my story. So I'll let you answer your questions first while I ruminate a little bit on the story I'm going to tell. So go ahead,
Okay.
Elle. What patrons are you shouting out, and what is your take on the question?
Well, I just wanted to state that Jables asked this question before all of the things that we're going to talk about that you might have a story to tell about. But let's start with, I don't know, Arutarek. Nothing's
You'll get it right one day.
No, that's how I pronounce it. That's how it's pronounced. Arutarek. Nothing's keeping me from going back to the 360, really. But the ease of being able to switch between games and apps on the Series X certainly makes it a much easier system to deal with. If I want to play a game on the 360, though, I will. It's no issue at all to boot it up and play it. Oh, boy. Is that true? Northern Lass says, the effort it takes to turn on my 360 and Xbox One original, which I play it through seems immense. But for some reason, I seem to intermittently lose some of my digital game licenses, which is frustrating. However, I do occasionally buy a 360 disc, which forces me to play. We really are spoiled now with the quick boot up and loading times. Absolutely agree with you, Northern Lass. The 360 is slow, and also it's noisy. It makes a lot of noises. My Series X is quiet and fast.
What about this losing of the licenses that she mentions?
I know what that's about. Like,
I mean, occasionally that happens with the arcade games. That definitely does happen,
right,
where you boot it up and then it says that it thinks it's the demo.
Right.
I've definitely had that happen.
Right, so you'll get the message that's like, if you want to play the full game, unlock the full game. And it's like, my purchase history says I bought this game in 2009. I should be able to play the full game whenever I choose. And there isn't at least not that I'm aware of, there's not a consistent workaround to make it work. I've deleted and reinstalled games. I've just tried rebooting games. I've tried to boot them up under different profiles. It just seems to forget occasionally that you own something. And in my experience, it's not a universal issue. It's specific games that will have that issue routinely, but I couldn't tell you off the top of my head which games do.
And one more I'll be reading is from Huckleberry Tyler. It is hard for me to play 360 games for no reason anymore. Must have been sitting for years. Piqued my interest enough to buy it but not play it. So I could play a 10 to 15-year-old 360 game or play something new I've purchased recently or is on Game Pass that will look and hopefully feel better than a 360 game. Interesting, very interesting. My son, who's also named Tyler, will do the same thing and say, Dad, why are you playing a 360 game? It's old. And then, he'll watch me play some right like a game that was released last year that looks way worse than 360 games. So it's all a matter of perspective, I guess. But I'm happy playing old games, new games. I could still play 30-year-old games. Doesn't matter to me. But yes, I would say the biggest issue is just the load time of booting up the 360. That is number one. I think everyone has had that answer, and that there are some small fixes such as deleting and reinstalling your profile, which works a little bit. You can try putting your profile on a USB stick. Sometimes that works and speeding up a little bit. At some point in the 360 life cycle, they introduced installing the discs to the hard drive, which helped tremendously both to preserve the lifespan of your disk drive and also load times, as well as the sound of the disk spinning the entire time. So that was a big thing for any of you young people that didn't live through that. We had such horrible things. As far as personal opinion, like, I'll still play 360 games. I have no problem with that. I still have many to play, still have many AAA titles to play. Many of them are, of course, backwards compatible now, but not all of them. So as far as what is holding you back from playing completing games, yep, it's probably laziness like everyone else, putting the disc in, turning on the 360. But once it's on and running, the games work fine. It's not like they start lagging or, going crazy. Although the occasional freeze does happen too.
I got to admit, though, sometimes, and you noted this earlier when you were starting into the question, the sound, the noise my 360 makes, like, it sounds really bad. Specifically with Orange Box, which is actually a game I have a little story to tell about. But it's, for whatever reason, when I put that game in, it just sounds like my Xbox is about to lift off. And you don't realize, like, you don't really gather how quiet it is using systems that aren't reading off a disk the whole time until you're sitting there playing something where the disk is running the whole time. And I don't know if, I think I've heard that before about Orange Box, that's kind of a thing with that game. Not every game is as loud, but it is so loud.
As you say, it's like playing PS5, right?
Wow.
It's like the same complaint that people...
We don't
shots
usually
fired,
do
pew,
that.
pew. There's no code, but shots fired. Pew, pew.
Yeah, no code. Is that a PS5 complaint?
That is a PS5 complaint. At least early on, they were saying that it's very loud.
Huh.
They equated it or likened it to a jet engine, just like you were saying.
Yep.
For the 360. So what's old is new again. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Well, are you set there, Al? Is it okay if I take the baton from you? All right, cool. So to continue on with this story about Orange Box, I, as I've mentioned before, I participate in Random To-Do List, and this month on my Random To-Do List, because I am trying to clear out that backlog a little bit, I drew 5 non-backwards compatible games. But that wasn't even the problem I had. The problem I had was a backwards compatible game, the Orange Box. And the problem was this. We are super spoiled by cloud saves. Like, super spoiled, right? We're all gamers of the same age. Remember going to your friend's house and not having your, like, PlayStation expandable memory card with you? so you couldn't access your save. Remember borrowing a game from Blockbuster and it was a battery pack in the cartridge, so everything went bye-bye with it, and you had to hope maybe if you rented it again in the future nobody deleted it on you? We're really spoiled by cloud saves. And I had put in Orange Box, I have a fairly easy achievement to go for that's somewhere in the middle of Half-Life Episode 1, which I've played start to finish, so I just need to do a chapter select thing. And I had to put the disc into my Xbox Series X because I don't have that game digitally. And I don't recall if you can or can't, but I don't either way. And much to my chagrin, there was no save data because it was locked up on my 360. But this isn't a problem because we're going to just turn on the 360 and copy that save right over to the cloud. We're going to play. We're going to have a grand old time taking grenades from zombines. Except I got that error message that Koosh so nicely recited at the top of the show. So I could not access my cloud saves and could not, not that I could not proceed with my Half-Life achievement. I certainly could, but it felt a little backwards to replay the game when I knew the save was right there. So good news update. Right before we recorded today, I actually logged into my 360 and it did work. There has been news floating around that issue has been resolved, and at least for me, it was resolved today.
So you didn't do anything. They resolved the issue.
They resolved it. I didn't have to. Okay. And that's hopefully by the time people are hearing this on Thursday, anyone who's dealt with this, it will have resolved for you. As we know with Xbox issues, especially this one, which never got like a status page update, it can be a little funky. But I went and logged in like I've been trying to log in, and this time it just popped me right into the console. And if I was smart, I would have moved every save to the cloud, but I only moved my Half-Life one, so I'm sure I'll regret that later. And as another aside, I did not actually read the full blog post yet, but after we're done recording, I intend to. I saw Kronos wrote a blog about sort of the end of 360. He even said like something like unnecessarily dramatic title or something to indicate that that's not actually what he meant. But it's kind of scary when you think about it, that these services, we've complained about multiplayer services going down forever. There might come a day where just these 360 services go down. And if it's not backwards compatible, you're done. We're already kind of seeing that Windows Phone, that's happening. Connect games, that's a thing. So anyway, that was my little story. But back to patron stuff, because that's really who we want to hear from. So first off, I'm going to just highlight DinoMan87, who just said that he pretty much agrees with what Jblacq said about non-backwards compatible games that are hard for him to go to. That Dinoman loves the 360, but it's slower. It's way slower than the newer consoles. And sometimes I get disconnected from live and they don't always let me know that, which I'm surprised Elle didn't highlight, because you know what happens when you pop an achievement offline? Doesn't count for very much, especially if you're into contests. So, and that is an issue. Elle has trained me over years to make sure I smash the guide button before an achievement to make sure that I'm connected so that I get credit for them.
Yep.
So that was an issue with the 360. It was an issue early on with backwards compatibility, but it seems to have resolved. Moving on, I'm reading the current names. If you're in Discord, people change their names all the time, so sometimes I forget that. Chewie.
Yeah.
Chewie says, well, it was nothing insofar as having difficulty going back to 360 games, because I was really enjoying Random To-Do List and Better Completions Matter, getting me to go back and clean up 360 stuff. But then my 360 died yesterday and I was very sad. And now this question is making me even sadder, so thanks for that. But I think the update is Chewie has gotten a new 360, so Chewie's going to get back in there and hopefully start picking up those old titles again. KT Echo. So this is I got to stop reading directly from the teleprompter. KT Echo says, before I joined Better Completions Matter, my plan for 2022 was to cut my non-backwards compatible backlog in half. Now, however, most of my game time is dedicated to optimizing whatever the current month's bonus is in Better Completions Matter. Non-backwards compatible games also seem to have lower ratios than you'd expect, so not valuable point-wise. And I think this is something also that Hawkeye Barry brought up. For contests, 360 games generally are not great. We didn't have as many options, we didn't have Game Pass, there isn't the sort of point inflation, so it does make them less attractive for contest purposes. And then also I want to highlight what Lego had said, which is also in this vein here. I'm happy to go back there really isn't any reason why I haven't finished the games I haven't, be they on Xbox One or 360. That said, the issue with signing in on 360 is really ruining it all. Thought I had it sorted, but it's back a month later. At least I finished my Better Completions Matter game at the time. So this issue, again, with the logging in, the profiles, and not being able to pull them down, this isn't the first time we're seeing it. I think this is a longer outage than the last time. Most of us don't check into our 360s that frequently, but this was a long enough outage that it affected a whole lot of people. So that's a little scary that might be a thing that we're going to contend with. But I mostly agree with everything that's been said. The slow load times are an issue. Getting up and putting in a disc is an issue. Just the ratios and things like that when you're dealing with contests. The 25-hour game is a 1.2 ratio because everybody played it at the time. I love my 360. I'm not here talking to you all without my 360. I wasn't an Xbox original adopter. So if not for getting that console, I am nowhere in this community. So I love it and I respect it. But I'm also kind of getting to that point now where I'm definitely going back to it far, far less frequently. So with that said, what about you, Nate? What are you thinking on this one?
Well, my thinking is we want to hear from the patrons before we get to my piddly thoughts. Retro Chief says, I don't mind playing the non-BC backwards compatible 360 games on the 360 unless they are multiplayer. Then the added hassle of getting a party on the One or Discord is off-putting. Much easier on the BC ones and just firing up a party on the One. My setup, I have a 360 and the Xbox One side by side, so it's very easy for me to have my wireless headset stay connected to the One. I don't have to worry about that. Back when I was gaming in my living room, I had the bright idea, and I had a Turtle Beach headset, which was not wireless. I had the bright idea to go buy a 20-foot long USB cable, and I would just plug it into my headphones so they would never disconnect. And that's how I was able to stay on party. Because other times I'd be in the middle of something and we'd be hunting zombies, and all of a sudden I would realize that no one was hearing me and I wasn't hearing anyone. And that doesn't go so well when you're trying to coordinate.
Because the controller idles out, right? After a while.
Oh, yeah, because your controller idles, and then therefore, boom, your headset no longer is connected to the Xbox.
Yep.
So
the new wireless headset.
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't do
exactly what I was going to say. Mm-hmm. The fact that it disconnects from the controller. Yep. And you can just keep on talking makes that so much easier.
Because usually,
that's
usually when someone's batteries went out, that's they would go take out their batteries and you would go make fun of them while they were not there. But now they can hear you if they have a wireless headset.
When was the last time you used the 360 voice chat?
It's terrible.
2012.
Oh gosh.
2012.
I mean, right after the One initially came out, because not everyone had made the jump and more of your games were still on 360, there was definitely that it's just easier for us all to party up on the 360. And man, you didn't realize what poor audio quality we were dealing with on the 360 chats. It's really bad.
A couple years ago, Planting was running, I don't know if he was the main guy or if he was just facilitating, a Turok boost. It was like a 24-player thing. And so I think we actually had two parties on two separate accounts. And he was kind of he had two headsets on, one on this way, one on this way, kind of catty-cornered on his head so he could hear both and talk to both. And he was kind of coordinating the whole thing. And it was horrible. Everything was like robocall, like roboting. And it was just, you'd have to hear something and then parse it in your brain. And it would be like a 2-second delay where you're just like, oh, you want me to press the A button? It was so bad. Yeah. So yeah, there's got to be a better way. And for me, just partying on the One and playing on the 360, not a big issue. I hope everyone else can figure out their setup, because using the 360 is horrible for voice. Logic Slayer, moving on, says, I try and alternate between old games and new games. This year, I have finished A Kingdom for Keflings,
You're welcome.
World of Keflings. Someone's getting his props. Borderlands, The Bourne Conspiracy, The Saboteur, and Wanted, Weapons of Fate. I like to think I'm doing pretty well, and I agree. That's a lot of good stuff, minus those Kingdom games, those Kefling games. yeah, I look at that list and I'm like, I want to play Born, I want to play Saboteur, or I want to finish Saboteur, I want to start Wanted. Yeah, that's a good list. Uncle Beast, he says, I'm pretty good about balance, but my biggest issue in general is just such a large, intimidating backlog to sort through, both started and unstarted titles. And yeah, I think for me, that's probably the biggest thing that's keeping me from doing my 360 is that front and center, I've got all these Xbox One games, and I've got a huge 360 backlog. And trust me, I love those games. You know that I do the the licensed games. Those things are old. They haven't done a new licensed game in a while, besides like this Hotel Transylvania games and stuff like that. But the heyday of the licensed game was like so far back. And those games still look pretty good. So it's not a graphical issue. It's not really the spin up or any of that stuff. Sometimes it's the fact that my disk drive won't open. I need to get a paperclip and like push that little secret button to eject. But for the most part, it's just that there's so little time in the day, and I've got this new stuff that's about to jump off of Game Pass, and I got to go play 2 stacks of Narita Boy as soon as this is over, before the end of the month. So it's just stretching myself too thin, I think, is what's keeping me from going back to the 360.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I think we're all given to that. We all now at this point, and not globally all, but I know among the three of us at least, we have lengthy gaming histories now. And there's so many things on the 360 that I want to get back to. It's really not that I don't. It's not even like, oh, new shiny. So I'm distracted. It's just at some point you got to leave the past in the past. You got to just keep moving forward, and it gets easier to cut that stuff out for sure.
Like you were saying, there's a day coming in the future, and I don't want to hear it. There's a day coming in the future where the 360 is going to get the same treatment that the Windows Phone is getting.
Right.
And it makes me sad because all these other consoles, the NES, even the GameCube, I think, and the Genesis, they all have emulators. But because there was so little online, like, checking that had to occur, like you can have emulators play those games. But can you reliably make an emulator that's going to let you play all these 360 games that are trying to ping out to servers and get things back? Like, hopefully someone is like capturing that traffic and doing all the nerd work to make that happen. But I don't have a whole lot of faith.
Well, and I think this is a very broad kind of discussion because I don't pretend to really understand any of the tech behind games. I just play them. But I think for a lot of 360 gamer or a lot of Xbox gamers in communities like ours, it's really not the fear of losing the games themselves, because even though I couldn't connect to Xbox Live because my profile wouldn't download to upload my saves or whatever, I still could have played the game. It's that the fear of my achievements no longer being unlockable, my save no longer being accessible on another platform. So I think there's kind of 2 bits to that discussion, because there are things we'll lose, like multiplayer, which we've already lost, but the game should still be playable, irrespective of if they shut something down. It's just the achievements, right? I think with Windows Phone, the game's on your phone, you could still play it. It's just once D-Day hits for those games, you're not earning any more achievements. And that's a big part of our experience, obviously. But when we're talking about Super Nintendo games, we weren't playing Legend of Zelda to earn the achievement for getting the red tunic. We were playing it to play Legend of Zelda. So it's the achievement part of the discussion is really what crystallizes that as a fear, I think, more than actual access to the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, people were...
I think that...
Go ahead, Aiden, come back to me.
No, you go ahead. I was about to wrap up, so you keep going.
No, well, Big Mouth has to talk some more. So people were ruminating about...
Hey, that's my word.
People were talking, discussing. People were talking about how they think this is how the 360 is going to go down. With no warning, it's just going to stop working like this, just like the Windows Phone. And then other people were saying, no, it's not going to happen like that. Way more people are invested in the 360, and they promise to make things work and this and that. So it's going to be interesting to see down the road. And like you were saying, like, I think I would imagine achievements will still work, but they just won't be timestamped, right? Like, I would imagine they'll still pop.
Right. I mean, I think Microsoft has invested so much in the infrastructure of making the 360 still be relevant by, building backwards compatibility and by having Xbox 360 games benefit from things like the different, I don't know if FPS boost is the correct thing. So, Koosh, I trust you to know these things. But by benefiting from those things that sort of up-res these older games so they look even more pretty, they've clearly invested time in the 360, as much as they feel they have access to keep it as part of this current generation's accessibility. So I don't see there being this magic moment where it's all the whole thing is gonna flip off. But I would be concerned for games that are not available via backwards compatibility, because there's going to be a point at which it's the 360 console itself and whatever's attached to that's the problem, not just it being a 360 game. I'm not sure if what I said made sense, but that's what I'm going with.
Okay.
I think it did. And hopefully Phil Spencer, he is a gamer and he understands gamers. So I think he's got a line into, this is something that we want to have be around for as long as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Before you move on, I wanted to tell my quick story of what happened with my 360. But this happened in the beginning of February. So this is before a lot of people were complaining about it. And what wound up happening for me is someone figured out that turning off your recurring billing to Game Pass solved it. And I said, that makes no sense. But I went to Xbox.com and turned it off. And that's what worked for me after trying everything else. As of now, there's Reddit threads dedicated to this problem. And people are doing everything from the aforementioned deleting and re-downloading your profile to clearing your cache, turning off two-factor authentication, turning on two-factor authentication, and so on and so forth. Just so many different people had different issues or different things fix it. So yeah, none of it makes sense, and it doesn't sound good for the future. So hopefully Microsoft stays on top of it.
Well, thank you, Jblacq, for your question. And just a reminder, Vulgar Latin, Devin likes to ask those questions, I think, on like Fridays. So you have the weekend to think about them. But pay attention if you're a patron and you want to have your voice heard and your question or your response to a question read. Look for that end of this week, beginning of next week, and let's hear from you. Moving right along to the game showcase, where we talk about a game or games we've been playing this week in our ongoing quest to unlock their achievements. This week is a bit of a special week, as it seems we're all prepared to talk about Tunic.
Most of us are.
I know in the past couple weeks, I've been bagging on Tunic. Now, that's not because I don't want Tunic to do well, and it's not because I think it's going to be bad. It's because I'm trying to lower my expectations, because you know how I like these indie games, and I did not want to be disappointed. So I've been way overplaying that, and I was really very excited. And coming up to the launch day, I could not contain it, and I was getting crazy. I was refreshing the page, every hour, just looking for this thing, and then of course someone reminded me, "Hey, dummy. There is an ID at Xbox thing going on, and they're gonna shadow drop it." And sure enough, that's what they did. And of course they were gonna do that. So yeah. And now a bit of backstory. Tunic was created by Canadian indie developer Andrew Schuldice, which Elle made a funny joke about that. Well, he thinks it's funny. Over the past 7 or so years. It was first shown back in 2017, sorry, and again in 2018, and then mostly went quiet, aside from being positioned in several sizzle reels and a playable demo that he released multiple times. And so you'd go into the demo thinking, oh, I'm going to see something new. No, it's the exact same demo from last year or 2 years ago, but it is vaporware no more. Publisher Finji helped refine and publish the game straight into Game Pass this past week, and both Big L and I made time to confirm that it is in fact real, and it is, dare I say, spectacular.
Ooh.
Big L, why don't you kick it off? And have no fear, there will be no spoilers. We will be talking about mechanics. We might be mentioning items or what those items do, but not how we got them or any of that fun stuff. And we're going to talk about where it draws its inspirations and whatever else Big L wants to say about it. And Matrarch, you've got an interesting perspective that we'll hear from as well.
Yes. And also, I guess if we could just pull back the curtain just a tiny bit insofar as that we kind of pre-discussed this a little bit, and just to touch a little further on what Nate was saying with regard to spoilers. If you are in a position where anything about Tunic is a spoiler, you just haven't gotten to it yet, you don't want to know anything, don't listen, because there will be discussions. But there won't be any in-depth discussion of story, there won't be in-depth discussion of like how an item was acquired, more just about its existence. So just be totally clear about what you're going to hear if you keep listening through the game showcase this week.
Got that, folks? Got that? Yeah, I was skeptical about this because this is hard for me because in my eyes, a lot of the game is a spoiler. But what I mean by that is you are thrown into a world not knowing anything of what to do. It's very reminiscent of course, a game that it is a love letter to, and that's the original Legend of Zelda. So if you didn't have Nintendo Power, if you didn't have the Counselor's Corner, you did not know what to do in the original Legend of Zelda. And you walk forward, you get a sword, and you're on your way. And Tunic kind of does the same thing. There are signs, and they may or may not be in English. And you have to determine, like, what does this mean? What's going on? And eventually you figure out that there are, there's a game manual that looks like an NES game manual. And there are pieces or pages of it strewn about the world. And you pick up random pages from time to time. And you go in and read, and they will tell you more about the game. And it's the most fascinating part of the game to me, for sure. This is what makes the game. Oh, yeah. There's so much I could say. You want to take over and we'll discuss further?
Yeah. So my first introduction to this game was playing the demo.
Really?
A couple years ago. And I think I only played for 15 or 20 minutes. I knew immediately that I wanted to wait and see the actual thing. And the thing about the demo is it used kind of an area of the opening of the game. It plays, I guess it starts a couple minutes into the game, but they changed everything around. You get to the top of this peak and you're fighting this guy who you are totally unprepared to handle. And he demolishes you. And that's the end of the demo. Or at least it was for me. I turned it off and said, okay, I am super excited. I want to play this when it's a real thing and not just a demo that he keeps pushing out. Yes, so clearly this game draws inspiration from Zelda. If you look at the cover art, it is a fox in a green tunic with a sword, looks a lot like the Master Sword, and a shield that looks a lot like the Hyrulean crest on his shield. So, yeah, they are not subtle about that at all. This game turns everything into discovery. You are just dropped, and you are figuring out how the world works from get-go. Apparently I can roll. Oh, apparently I can run. Oh, apparently, this thing is another thing that I can do. And oh, wow. You just run by the same thing 100 times, and you finally figure it out. Oh, if I do this at this particular place with this particular item, something happens. And like, that is a level, of learning that they don't do in today's games. Like, this throws way back to the NES days when you just kind of got blown away and you would go talk with your friends about games. And then one of them would be like, I have a friend in Ohio, and he said that if you push ABBA behind this tree, you hear a magical song and you get like an extra health bar. Like, that's the type of like learning that and sharing that we had in games way back in the day. Items you get, like you were talking about that user manual, items that you get fleshed out And it almost feels like the more you use it, or if you use it a specific way, sometimes that gets updated in the manual. So the manual is not static. It changes as you're going along. And some of that like squiggly text gets turned into English and you can actually read it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the little pictures, they're like little hieroglyphics that tell you, oh, okay. So red is obviously, your magic or whatever. I can't remember which is which.
Health.
Like green is typically life or health. I don't know.
Yeah, red's health,
but
green is
they
stamina.
kind of show you. Yeah, and they show you, oh, here's an item, and this item is the color red. I wonder if that somehow helps you get your health back.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of thing. Like, oh, here's a blueberry. I wonder if that helps you get your magic skill back. And sure enough, it does. So they do all kinds of cool stuff like that. Can I just say that they respect the waterfall? Like, this developer understands how waterfalls are supposed to work in games, and like they really understand it. That's all I'm going to go into on that. Maps and areas include clues or for shortcuts. So like there's a map inside your manual, and like it'll have like a little, here's a little thing you would have gotten in Nintendo Power that shows you, here's a thing, here's a room, here's an entrance, here's a whatever. Here it's probably a chest, but I don't see a chest. I wonder. So it's all about discovery. The enemies have varied attacks, so you're not going in there and just doing a one note swing. Like they have different attacks. There are some enemies that have swords and they'll swing once and then a delay and then a second and then sometimes a third. And then there's other guys that have shields, and like you can't attack them in the same way that you attack a guy that just has a sword. And then sometimes you get these flying enemies, and sometimes flying enemies with projectiles. There's a lot of variety in the enemies. You're not going to be just bored with the combat. It's a stamina-based fighting system. So you can't just block forever. Like if you block, that's going to take away some of your stamina. You have to figure out what you're going to do. You can't just sit there and hide behind your shield the whole time. Like you have to know how you're going to do this attack. Assuming that you don't read the solutions on TA or hear spoilers, every little thing you do feels like a massive discovery. Like I've never felt more a genius than when I've been playing this game. And I'm like, holy crap. I just discovered this. Like, I am awesome. I've been going for a while. El, did you want to touch on any of that stuff, or Matrarch? Do you want to jump in on anything?
I wanted to just touch on one thing with the enemies. I guess one little quick story and one little thing to note. So the layout of areas is very smart from what I observed. So just in the interest of full disclosure, I have not yet played Tunic myself, but I was hanging out with El this weekend and I watched him play for about an hour and a half. So I didn't pick up the controller, but I have seen the game in action and witnessed a lot of this. And I definitely left even watching the game going, oh man, I gotta go home and start this right now. And then I realized it strikes me, you both can speak better to this than I can. If you're going to play Tunic, because of the exploratory nature with things, you need to give it time. You need to stick with Tunic because you're not. I would imagine there is eventually one, like 100% is 100% for everyone, but the paths everyone is going to take to get there is different. And so we discussed this when we were discussing this earlier. As Nate was showing us a little bit of what he's playing, Elle's watching what Nate's playing going, I don't have that thing. But then conversation comes up and Elle goes, oh, but I have this. And Nate goes, but I don't have that. So everyone's going to experience this differently. And it's not the kind of game where you should pick it up and drop it for a month, because you might read a FAQ or a walkthrough and they're going to say, well, use the shield, and you still may not have encountered it yet. And now you're going to have to figure out where to go. So I wasn't ready for that yet. But insofar as combat, two quick things. Again, layout in the game is very smart. When I was watching, I was going down a hallway where there were these three enemies there, and the way they were set up, these particular enemies, when you hit them and when you kill them, they explode. So the idea is walk in the hallway, kill one, drag the other two forward, and they will just explode and all die. And it's a really easy room. But if you just go in there flailing your sword around, you're going to get killed over and over again. So pay attention to the way the game is designed, because it's done everything seems very deliberate. It's done by design. Nothing is by happenstance. The other thing, though, when you are running, enemies follow you out of rooms. So you have to be mindful of how you're moving through. There is some kind of God mode. And I believe that you can turn on and makes it So anyone at any skill level can play. And if that's how you want to play and engage with the game, that's great. But if you don't choose to play that way, it does not make any attempt to hold your hand. So if you're running away from those enemies, you have to be smart about it because they will chase you through doors. There's probably a limit to that. But
I have a story based off of that. And awesome. I think anyone who's played the game is going to know exactly what I'm talking about when I get to it. I'm in one area of the game. When you die, a shower of coins, let's just call them rupees, go flying out of your body. And if you go back and you find your body, you can get those back. And when you first see that, you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's so much money. No, every time you die, if you don't get back to your body, it's 20 coins. Don't worry about that. If you can't get back to your body, don't worry about it. I didn't know that. So I was going along. I'm just slowly exploring the map, and I'm trying not to get into too much trouble. And all of a sudden, I find a cool little hidden pathway that I've never found before. And I run into an enemy that I wasn't expecting. And so I start to run away from that enemy. Unfortunately, I ran away from that enemy towards another enemy. And then now I've got 2 enemies trailing me. And so I just start running in an area I've never been. I am now uncovering portions of the map like at the fastest pace I've ever done, finding these like little ways to get into things and running into enemies I've never seen before. I don't know their attack patterns. I now have 8 enemies on me, 4 of which I've never seen before. And I'm just dying, and I see a chest. I'm like, oh, I gotta get the chest. And so I get the chest, and then I die, and it's just a shower of rupees. And I spent the next 20 minutes trying to find the beginning of the path back to that point, but I couldn't because there's so many sneaky pathways. I was like, what was I doing? I think I was over here. There's got to be a hidden something over here. It took me forever to finally figure that out again. And when I was finally able to get back to where my body was, I backtracked and finally figured out that path. Yeah, so enemies follow you, and they are vicious.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
And it's just because there are so many items and things that are built to make certain areas of the game easier. And that's the level design, at least as an outside observer, just seems very, very smart that way. Even, and Elle can talk to this more, when you finish certain dungeons, when you exit the dungeon, it's designed in such a way that there's either a shortcut right back to the front door, or it puts you in the map real close to where you needed to be. It's great things take time, and this clearly took time, but all of this stuff, like the deliberate nature of it, just as the person playing the game, hopefully at some point, it just seems so rewarding to get through that and then be rewarded with, look, you don't need to walk through the whole dungeon again. And it's not like a warp point or something that just makes you appear. It's actually designed in such a way to drop you back at the beginning.
Yeah, and it's mind-blowing because you say to yourself, wait a minute, could I have gone through this other way all along? And the answer is probably yes, you could have.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And that goes for certain things you learn in the manual that you're like, wait, I could have done this in the beginning, but now they're teaching me how to do this. So I guess if you started a new game, you would have knowledge of things you could do off the bat. There's certain...
Yeah, your second playthrough would be so much...
Yeah.
You'd cut so many corners.
Yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but like just certain things that you could do with items in your inventory, for example, that you didn't know you could do. By the way, I have not used a single thing in my inventory out of fear.
So you have a whole inventory of megalixirs?
Basically, yes.
You might run out of them.
All the I guess I could say, yeah, there are fruits you find, like you acknowledged. I haven't used any of them. I don't know why, because I know, I don't know, just the stuff you find seems to be finite, so I don't want to waste it if I need it later.
I have not spent a single coin. So why am I so obsessed about losing 20 at my body? I haven't found a place to spend any money.
Really?
Yet. So yes, I have not figured that out yet.
Okay.
See, this is so funny that like you're like, well, clearly you go to the vending machine, dummy.
I mean, there's a place.
But yeah, so I haven't spent any money yet, but I used items. You haven't used items. I've totally used items. Yeah. I can tell you what that does. But I'm not going to.
The manual eventually told me what some of them do.
Yes.
And one of them
definitely want to do that.
One of them looks to be like a lore, like a similar. It reminded me of like a Skelly in Hades. You could like put down a. But yeah, that's
one thing I can't talk about too much. Unfortunately, this is a show about achievements. I can't talk about the achievements too much because I haven't looked at them. Really, I looked a little bit to see, okay, how many things are marked as missable, and it's early days yet, so maybe that information isn't right. Maybe that information is not complete. There's 3 missables. I think one of them is only missable if you read. It's only not missable if you've just been scanning through the achievements and you know exactly what you have to do. Like in a natural playthrough, it's going to be something you get on your second playthrough. And your second playthrough will be very fast, I think, compared to your learning playthrough. So if you are the type of person that wants to play this game and wants to enjoy this game,
don't listen to anything.
Enjoy this game. Enjoy this game. Don't read the spoilers or don't read the achievements. They are spoilers. They spoil so much for you. I'm sure of it.
Yeah.
So going back to the items very briefly. I am the type of person that in an RPG at the end of the game, I will have everything, including the starter sword that I started with. Like I won't have gotten rid of that. In this game, I started doing the exact same thing, but then I was like, just whatever. And then I read in the manual that you find on page 17. I remember it distinctly. It's on page 17 of the manual. There's a little note in the margin that tells you to do something, and I did that something. And it basically it tells you to do the opposite of what you're doing. Now it says just use your items, just use them. Like don't not use your items, use them. And sure enough, I just started using them, and I popped an achievement. And
I think I know what you're talking about.
So I am afraid, though. I'm afraid that I've locked myself out of another achievement because I started using an item that, number one, you have no idea what using an item even means. Like, am I going to eat this fruit? Am I going to throw the fruit? And you know what? I have no idea what it's going to do because the game is not helping me. Like, I have to learn by experience. And so I started doing this one thing. I was like, hey, that was fun. Let me do it to another. And I did. And I think I might have done it too many times. And I don't have enough of those items left over at the end of the game to get an achievement. So I don't know. Maybe I can buy them in a store that I haven't found yet. But but right now, I'm worried.
I thought another thing that was interesting with the manual. So I haven't seen the manual I didn't see what the manual looked like when you first opened it up. So by the time I'm watching the game, obviously Elle has found, like I saw one page get found, like, oh, there's something new. It will indicate for you that you can now read the manual on page whatever. So I don't know if there are things that might stealth update in the manual, but from what I saw, anything that you earn that updates the manual, the game does indicate that to you.
Oh yeah, the manual definitely changes. Because if you look at the very beginning, it's all squiggly text.
Okay.
And then as you play more, like they translate some of that stuff. And sometimes, like you were saying, you'll see an item and you'll be like, hey, I have that item. And it says, see page 20. And well, you don't have page 20 yet. So
right.
It's just like,
well, and the other thing,
total tease.
Now, I've never done this. Like, and I'm not saying that sarcastically. I've literally never done this because the idea of writing in any printed thing that isn't something printed with lined paper that means I'm supposed to write in it is just abhorrent, and I won't do it. But it looks like there are some spots in the manual too where whoever had the manual or made the manual in the context of the game put like notations of their own. And I don't know if you've noticed that or if that was there or whatever else, but even stuff like that's cool because it looks like somebody looked at the manual and the manual gave them a hint, but they discovered another hint and left that for you as you're playing the game.
No, it's great. I mean, we bag on games like Duke Nukem Forever for taking forever to come out, and it's just like another Duke Nukem game. There's like, why was this in the oven so long? This game has been in the oven for so long, and it shows. Like, there's so much detail in this game. It's, I don't know if it's obvious. I really like this game.
Now, I have a question for both of you with regard to Tunic, though. Because of the way the game plays now on your first playthrough, it's exploration, it's taking your time, it's figuring out this, that, and the other. Do you foresee for yourselves, because I don't know the list at all. I know, Koosh, you said you've taken a peek at it. Elle, I don't believe that you have, from what I'm gathering.
Nope.
But if the game doesn't require, if Tunic doesn't require a 100% run, are you so taken with this game that you think you may do that sort of thing because you're just enjoying the exploration? Or do you think sort of our need to get achievements is kind of rear its head here, and it's going to be, well, I'd love to do that, but I'm going to back burner this because I've got to move on to something else?
I think the need to get achievements is secondary to a lot of this for once. And it's a great feeling. When an achievement pops, you're like, oh, what did I do? That's cool. That's the best feeling. And, but from what I've heard, it's not, I don't think it's a long campaign. So doing a second run is not out of the question. And I'm definitely trying to not use a guide to go through. I imagine things will get more complicated and more convoluted as I go, but I'm trying. I think you're doing yourself a disservice. I know this is going to sound like Gatekeeper L, but I really think you're doing yourself a disservice by using a guide to tell you, do this, do that, do this, do that. I also think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're turning on no fail. Like, combat is part of the game. It's not, if it was meant to just be a puzzle game, there wouldn't be fighting. It's like Zelda. Every Zelda game had a fair difficulty. It was beatable. And you had to use your it wasn't just about, like, every Zelda enemy wasn't just figuring out patterns. You also had to figure out the right items to use and such and such. The combat's actually like the N64 Zeldas with the targeting. Did you play those, Koosh?
Yeah.
So if you remember, like, you held down, I guess it was Z targeting,
like
back
that weird Z targeting that was on the, that hidden inside the controller. You had to open a panel to get to it. Yeah.
Z targeting. Yeah, but that's what it reminds me of with the left trigger targeting. But like, there's just one enemy that kills you pretty quickly, and part of the puzzle to me is figuring out how to defeat it. And then once you do, you're like, okay, I could do that. And then another valid strategy is to run past some enemies.
Oh, I know exactly who you're talking about.
And some will follow you into other rooms, but not if you can climb a ladder, because they won't climb ladders.
And some will follow you a little bit, but then they'll run back to their position, and maybe you can take advantage of that.
Yes.
Yes, going along with the combat, this is a sort of combat where you learn, and I would recommend strongly that you play it and you try to learn that combat. If you can't, okay, turn on no fail mode. I don't know what that does, but I'm going to assume it doesn't allow you to fail. Like, I was fighting some guys, and originally I would, like, swipe at them, and I would do this huge rollback. I'd roll out of the way of their second swipe. Eventually, I figured out, oh, no, I don't have to do that. I can just like flick the stick back just a tiny bit and, like, just dodge the sword and then go back in for another strike. And, like, you just get better at the combat. You, like, once you realize what the patterns are, now maybe on your second run through, you don't want to do all that. Or maybe you're really good and you're just like, whatever, I'm just going for, like, a speed run, and you turn on no fail mode, whatever. But I would definitely recommend that until you know this game is not for you or whatever, just take it the way you're supposed to, and spend some time with this game. But, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but that's what I would recommend. And of course, other people are just going to jump in and no fail right from the start and look at a guide.
Yeah.
And, watch some YouTube videos while they're doing it. Okay. I'm sorry,
Say it,
but
Nate.
Okay. I guess that's
shouldn't
okay.
do it.
Yeah, I don't think you should. Like, I wouldn't. I feel I'm a little bit sad and broken inside when that happens, but I understand it's going to happen. Somebody's going to do it. But
now, again, as to the question, where do you see yourself falling insofar as once you get that last achievement? If you haven't found, like, if there's a piece of the manual that still has a squiggle, if there isn't a 100% the manual achievement, like, are you into this game so much so that achievements, who cares, I'm going to go in and do this? Or like, I'm just wondering if it raises to that level of gameplay for you.
So if there wasn't an achievement for getting 100% on the manual, I would probably go and, number one, I would find out, is this a completable manual? And then if it was, I would go do that stuff. I mean, I'm the type of gamer, I was just playing, Outriders last night with Mattism. He's a good guy. He would never leave me in the lurch.
Never.
We started.
He has a name now.
He was running me through and helping me get this 2-player achievement that I needed to get. And then we killed this boss, and he's like, okay, now check this out. I'm like, wait, no, we killed the boss. He's like, no, check this out. Over there in this room that's a cave is a table with a red phone. What? And he's like, yeah, there's a table with a red phone. Go pick it up. I'm like, you're making this up. And sure enough, so I was just like, that's really awesome. I want to go on the internet and find out what else weird is happening in this game. So yeah, I think I would if I really liked the game.
Mm-hmm.
I like Outriders. I really like this game. I think I would go try to find all the cool stuff. Like there's a cave that has, the guy's social security number written on it. I'm going to go see that. Like I definitely want to check those sorts of things out. And I would probably do this. Now, I don't like this as much as Death's Door, and I know that's weird because I'm really just kind of effusive about this whole thing, but it's a good game. It's a really good game, and I would probably squeeze everything out of it that I could. I know I'm going to play it a second time. Will I play it a third time? Probably not, but definitely 2 times.
Go ahead, Al.
I was going to say, we don't know how frustrating the game might get later, or how we might get stuck and have to turn to a guide. But in an instance like this, I think I'd rather ask the community for a little tip or a hint. Because as you always say, once you get the guide the first time, yeah, that's it.
That's a good point. I should mention in the I think it's the general channel, we have a Tunic thread, and I know it was hot and heavy the first day or two it was out. People were posting in there asking questions, and I think those guys have completed the game. So we definitely have some experts that can answer your achievement-related questions. And so you can go there and hopefully get just the amount of information that you're looking for and no more. So hopefully.
Yeah, I think
hopefully we can do that.
There's probably a middle ground where they probably looked at the list ahead of time, but then they didn't follow a guide to a T. So that like a middle ground. I mean, I don't even know what type of guides there are out there. I'm sure at this point there are, but maybe on release date there weren't.
So, can I ask you guys a boring question?
Sure.
I love boring questions. Go for it.
What about just kind of the basics of a game? The aesthetics, the sound, the music. Is any of that captivating to either of you, or is
I don't play with sound on.
Stop it.
What? What? We kicked him off the podcast. Why would you even say that?
I'm trying to give Elle a heart attack.
No.
I know you do.
No, but because a lot of what I hear about Tunic, a lot of what I've witnessed about it really is again just the design of things, the way you find things, the way you explore the world. But I don't really hear much about sound design or about how you feel about how the game looks. So just curious if you have any quick hits about that.
Elle, why don't you go first?
Sure. Okay, well, as far as the visuals go, I like them. I think I saw some people bagging on them, and I think they're very nice. I couldn't quite figure out that the bush was a bush at first, but that's okay. I'm sure that was unintentional, probably. I think the visuals are good. I don't think I pointed out that I've been playing this with my son in tow also. So normally I would have headphones on to experience the sound. So I haven't quite gathered it as intimately as I normally would. But I can say that unlike Zelda, there have been no tunes that I could whistle for you. Where Zelda always had a great soundtrack. Tunic, so far, nothing. Nothing's been bad or anything, but I can't remember anything offhand. So I guess that would be one negative for me so far.
That's my exact same answer. Like nothing has stuck out in my memory. Like I can't tell you about the sound design. I can't tell you about the music because nothing has stuck in my brain. It's all been about the experience and the aesthetics, I think.
And does Tunic clue you in at all about what the story is? I know you said you experience everything through the manual, but have you had this moment where you wake up and that some fairy was talking to you about things that you need to do or whatever? Or did it, I know you mentioned, just sort of drops you in the middle of something, but it gives you nothing? Or do you have any inclination about the name of the world you're exploring, or the general sense of why are you a fox wearing clothes and holding a sword?
I don't think so.
Well,
probably.
I think you get some story, but it's so far removed from the other story bits because you're exploring so much. I think it's kind of hard to put the pieces together, and maybe at the end it'll make more sense.
I mean, look who you're asking, Michelle. I don't know these things. It took me forever just to figure out that you could see your position on the map. So, you know.
Oh, wow. Okay, unless you're in a cave.
Like, why does that fox keep
really
moving around? Oh,
I am the fox.
I'm the fox.
Oh, and speaking about, one thing I talked to you guys about earlier but didn't mention yet is pay attention to your fox's head.
Oh, yeah.
This has been in video games for a while, but they do a really good job of that here. Your fox will notice things that you don't. Secret passageways, items, enemies that are lurking around a corner or something. Your fox will notice these things, and it's your job to notice your fox. So
I'll be honest.
That's my final tip.
I did not notice that, but I have. I've definitely like hugged a lot of walls, and I've definitely gone through walls and found treasures and stuff like that, and like you said, waterfalls. So yeah, like explore every nook and cranny.
I would advise you in games to watch your character.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will see their head like snap to something. It's a common thing. They do that in Death's Door as well. Just saying.
I learned a lot from you, Sage Koosh.
All right. Well, I think we've more than covered it. That game, by the way, if you don't recall, is Tunic.
So is Tunic the name of the fox, or is it just named after a garment?
I think it's named after his shirt. I can't tell. I can't even spell Tunic in their language yet. So, so yeah, that was Tunic. That was our game showcase. Let's move on to sales because obviously you've got plenty of time to play new games. Matrarch, what do you got for us?
Well, what do you have for me? But actually, before you answer that, I just wanted to point out that 39 Days to Mars is on sale. This is a co-op puzzle game. Unfortunately, it's only a local co-op. It's not a steep sale. It's $10 down from $15. But this game has been tracked by less than 400 people, which is really a shame. It is good at what it does. I'm not going to call it a 5-star classic or anything, but if you're into games in the vein of like the We Were Here games, where the idea is that you have to work with cooperatively with someone else to solve the puzzles, it is a good time. I also need somebody to purchase the game that actually understands how to beat it in less than 30 minutes so they can tell me how. But that is all that jumped off the page for me.
Yeah, I think you get to lose on purpose or something like that. I forget what the tip.
I have been told that, but in my experience, losing on purpose involves failing the puzzle a couple times, and then you get the ability to skip it. But the amount of time it takes to fail the puzzles eats into that time. So, it's probably just me not being patient enough because you only have 30 minutes. But when I play, there's another achievement also to finish the game in under 50 minutes, and I managed to get that one, and I timed it, and I finished it in like 48. So it wasn't that I was close, and I was trying to fail puzzles and such. Anyway, I don't want to go on too much about 39 Days to Mars, but it is an enjoyable game. You do not need to play it in co-op. It plays better that way, especially if you do have someone local co-op to play it with. Controls can be a little wonky at times, but it is fun to figure out. Elle and I played it together and generally enjoyed the experience.
Yes. I'm going to go ahead and recommend some more. I guess I'll be nice to Kenny this week. Artifacts Monday games.
I'm very proud of you.
Thank you. Well, luckily, we didn't purchase Lost Grimoires 3 when it was on sale last week for $374, as the entire trilogy is on sale. Good job, guys. You're doing it right. So all 3 games for $8.99 instead of $14.99 each. I think that's a good deal. And there's another 3-pack, Family Mysteries. I never even heard of that one. That's another trilogy. So,
do you happen to know what's included in that one?
Yeah, Family Mysteries 1, 2, and 3.
Oh, okay. I didn't even know Family Mysteries
trilogy
was its own thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the Artifacts games tend to be bundled, and I know we've noted this before, but either the series itself, or it'll be like the
Random
Mystical
crap.
Travels bundle, and it'll be like one from 3 different. So I thought maybe that was one of the latter.
Nope.
But okay.
2 trilogies for $8.99 each.
Sounds like we're going to have 6 more Artifacts games to play.
Yeah.
Now, let me tell you, I did not
Wait, Nate,
not spend money last week.
open?
Well, I ended up picking up those 2 Artifacts Monday games last week.
No.
I'll tell you what, that deal is still good enough that I went in on the trilogies.
Yeah.
I went in on both those. It's so it's like $4 per game that I don't have for each one of those. I still think that's a deal. So
No, could you? I know we discussed that we obviously do not have the awesome Steam thing where you don't have to pay for the portion you own. But could you potentially buy it as a gift and then just you would have the code and then you can choose to give the code to someone else or something? Or is that like too convoluted a way to deal with this sort of thing?
Yeah, you don't get 3 codes, you get 1 code.
Oh, you get one singular.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, you get 1 code and you get all 3 games off of that.
I imagine if you contacted support, you get your $3.74 back from last week. If you,
but can you only do that like once
for something
once
like
a quarter
that
or something?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. It might be
I would
worth
do
reaching out to them. The worst thing that
could maybe
happens
do
is
that.
they say no.
I didn't even think to do that. I was just like, you know what? It's $4 for the 2 games I don't have. That's a pretty good
that's
deal.
a good call.
I'm
Oh,
just going to do it. So yeah, and of course now next week they'll release a 4th in both of those trilogies and have a super special sale.
just like
that's how
just
I
like
do it.
Indiana Jones 4.
That never happened. So today, this week, Matrarch, for you, I am recommending Archaica. It's $5 down from $15. It is a puzzle game. It's 2-3 hours. It has a walkthrough. You're not going to want it. You're not going to need it. Why would you do that for a 2 to 3 hour puzzle game? Nothing against you if that's what you do, but it's actually a fun game. It's based on life puzzles. Each level starts out with you finding 3 things, 2 sets of 3 things, and then you actually play the game, which is redirecting light with mirrors and probably diffraction at some point, and light amplifiers and fun stuff like that. So it is a cool little puzzle game. I've played the first 5 levels and I enjoy it. I think it's a great way to end the day. That type of relaxing kind of just, let me figure this out type game. So you might want to check that out. Additionally, you might be interested in Brawl Chess Gambit. This is $2.50 down from $10. It's strategy, turn-based card, and board. It's 1 to 2 hours. It has walkthrough. Okay, walkthrough for chess. Got it. There's also Checkers for Kids, which is $2.69 down from $7. It's puzzle, card, and board, and it is 1 to 2 hours.
Yeah, Checkers for Kids is some of these games, even though they're quick and they have walkthroughs, you might be able to play the game with people in your house. Like, I did not enjoy the game even as like the Checkers for Kids, even as a quick achievement sort of thing, because checkers doesn't convert well to playing on an Xbox. It's just not a whole lot of fun to do. So that is definitely a just for the gamer score game. I would not recommend that as a, hey, this is also something fun you might be able to play with the kids in your house to get them into video games with you.
Yeah.
Question about that puzzle. It's genred as puzzle. Is there a mode where you're just like, solve this in
Checkers?
3 moves?
No. And I've raised this. I had Checkers for Kids on my random to-do list either last month or the month before. And I wrote about this on TA in my blog where I'm like, I don't understand why this counts for puzzle, but I guess it does, especially because you can manipulate it in such a way that there really is no, it's 2-player but past the controller. So it's not like you have to, I think there might be 1 achievement attached to having to play. I know, Elle, you played this more recently than I did.
Mm-hmm.
But there were 1 or 2 achievements maybe attached to having to play the AI.
Yep.
But otherwise, you just set the whole thing up.
Mm-hmm.
So I have zero idea why it has a puzzle tag. It should just be card and board.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
not too
Oh, well.
exciting. If you're playing with a kid, get out a real checkerboard. It's not like Monopoly where it's really helpful to have an AI banker and an AI keep track of everything, auctions and stuff. Checkers, come on.
Right.
Huh. Well, if you want the achievements, it's only $2.69.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
For the
Grab it.
achievements, it's completely, yeah, absolutely go for it.
Now, 2 weeks ago, I talked about FAR Lone Sales. It was the first game in the FAR, whatever the other title game series is. It's on Game Pass now. It is $3 now. It's $3 down from $15. I didn't pay $15, but I didn't pay $3. This is an adventure game. It's 6 to 8 hours. We talked about it 2 weeks ago, and you are welcome. You want to play this, I think.
Thanks, Nate.
Now,
Thank you.
game for the two of you guys, Shakes on a Plane. This is a $4 down from 15 party game, and it's an Overcooked-like.
Whoa.
So you are on an airplane or various configurations of airplanes, and you're trying to serve people food. One of those food items are shakes, apparently. This is local co-op only. So you cannot do this at your respective places. You have to be together to do this. And I think I read a review that said even when you're playing single player, you have to have a second controller like logged in and just sitting in the corner. So be aware, maybe look into that some, but $4 down from 15. Especially if you're looking for some more Overcooked in your life, this might be the game for you. And finally, Wind Peaks, $9 down from 15. This is an adventure point and click. I think I've mentioned it before. It's similar to Hidden Through Time, if you remember that, which is a Where's Waldo-like. I think there's only 2 of these, 3 if you go back to the 360 games that I'm aware of that are kind of like Where's Waldo. But this game, unlike Hidden Through Time, has a story that kind of threads throughout all the different areas, whereas Hidden Through Time is just like, oh, here's the desert scene, here's the ice level, that sort of thing. This is great for involving younger kids because they can help you find things. You can have fun with it. You can look at all the weird stuff that the people are doing, and you can still get achievements while you're doing it. It's a little bit pricey, but if you're trying to knock out 2 birds with one stone, maybe that works for you. Moving on, for games that you've already paid for, we have Games with Gold. And this month, right now, you can get Street Power Soccer, which is available March 16th to April 15th. And you can get on the 360, you can get SpongeBob's Truth or Square.
I did see people playing that game.
Go ahead.
Yeah, people are. I did see people on my friends list actually playing that game. So
Truth or Square?
Yeah. A lot of adults.
Okay, cool. I want to get around.
A lot of adults are into SpongeBob, and for reasons unbeknownst to me.
Gotcha.
Drugs are bad. Okay.
Now, aside from what's that?
Drugs are bad.
Yes, drugs are bad. Aside from your Games with Gold, we have Game Pass, which is still giving out some new things. We mentioned last week, that Tunic was coming out. We've got a couple other things. We've got Tainted Grail Conquest coming out on March 22nd. We have Zero Escape, the Nonary games, coming out on the 22nd as well. We have Norco coming out on the 24th, no relation to He-Man. We have F1 2021, also coming out March 24th. We have Crusader Kings 3. I know that your people who love these types of Command and Conquer games, those sorts of strategy games, are really into the Crusader Kings, or would probably be really into them. I know Devin is very into this series. It comes out March 29th. Then we have Weird West coming to Game Pass on the 31st. I believe that this is like XCOM in the Wild West, and that should appeal to a lot of people. Leaving in March, we have Madden NFL 20. We have Narita Boy, and that is a stack, and I am going to be doing that as soon as we're done here. And then we also have Shadow Warrior 2. And then on April 11th, we're losing a game called Destiny 2, Beyond Light, Shadowkeep, and Forsaken.
I don't think that many people have played it, so it's not a huge loss.
No, I never heard of this thing.
And it's PC anyway.
It says PC here, so I don't know if that's only PC. Or if Xbox side of stuff is going away too.
Fair enough.
And last week we didn't have a whole lot of G-Task news, but this week we do.
We do. Unfortunately, we do. This is the time of the episode where we say so long to some of our G-Task competitors who have made it this far in the contest. It's getting pretty close to the end here, and I want to say that anyone who got eliminated in the last week actually had made it into the top 50, which is super, super impressive. But still, we have to say goodbye. On the individual side, we lost High Road V2, Zwavel Dioxide, and the Super Bob 49. On the team side, we did lose one team, which had a pair of AH101 members. This was the team of Breakin' Games, Crazy Gains, and Spread in Flames. And that included Inferno 118 and Noth. So, great run, guys. Sorry to see you guys out of it. But that means we have less teams to follow in the coming weeks. So, it's a little easier on us.
All right, for those still in it, the bonuses are in solo, precision aim worth 500 TA, and having unlocked at least 20 10G achievements from the shooter genre. That doesn't sound too bad. And team bonus, I'm a storyteller, in the period with each member having unlocked at least 20 20G achievements, flagged main storyline. I bet if you're really slick, you can combine those two things.
At this point in G-Task, with the teams that are still in and the individuals are still in, those are both really look like gimmies that they're going to get along the way with a little bit of planning. So it's a good time to be getting bonuses like these in G-Task.
They're easy, but they might be a waste of gaming time to go for those little dinky achievements.
That's true.
Right now, when we would normally talk about the current contest that's going on, if it was brand new, last week, our extra content, we had Freem and Chewie who were talking about their new thing that they're putting together, as well as some other roundups that they've done. Freem Haven is an event that's starting in April. Come check it out in the Discord or go back and listen to the end of the last week's podcast. Get a little more detail on that. We've got a thread up in the Discord, and you can ask questions there, sign up, find a team, and see a little bit more about what's going on next month. But moving on, we're heading to Bragg Camp.
Welcome to Bragg Camp, everyone. We're going to kick it off with completions, as we always do. Boots Orion has reached 300 completed games, as well as Sincere Seeker 6. Princet has completed 350 games, as well as Freemhole. Rossos Ross is up to 850 games. And even though he has completed 1,050 games, Noth still couldn't help but get eliminated from G-Task.
Shots fired?
Shots fired, but no codes. No codes. In ratio, nobody's doing
Well done.
In ratio, nobody's doing a thing. In streaks, we have Neon Prime is currently on a 50-day achievement win streak. iMike0 is at 200 days. Toby Lynn, 350. It's AliveX with 550. Rossos Ross with 900 days. Morbid 237 on a 1,000-day achievement win streak. We have Enigma Gamer 77 with 1,200 days. Seamus McLimey with 2,000. Then in the annuals, we have Ben L72 is currently on a 1-year achievement win streak. And Sincere Seeker 6 is currently on a 2-year achievement win streak.
I'll just jump in here and cover gamer score, because Elle's getting some stuff ready for later on, I suppose. In gamer score, we have Mr. P-Tart, who passed 400,000 gamer score, Logic Slayer, who passed 450,000 gamer score, and Fighter Chip, who reached 700,000 gamer score. And if I'm not mistaken, he did that by completing Elden Ring. So good job all around.
Wow. Doing the research.
Occasionally.
Doing the research. In leaderboard.
Until he says that was wrong.
Bastion Reader is now in the top 10 of the USA Max Possible Completion Percentage leaderboard for Windows Phone shoot-'em-ups. How many Windows Phone shoot-'em-ups can there possibly be? I would love to know. Enigma Gamer 77 is in position 10 in the Alberta Gamerscore leaderboard. Mad Eye Pad Eye is in the top 200 of the TA leaderboard. Mental Knight is in the top 200 of the TA leaderboard for sports. NBA Kirkland is number 1 in the Washington TA difference leaderboard for competitive ratio. Raw Sauce Ross is now in the top 100 of the TA leaderboard for party. Sir Polygon is now number 1 in the Georgia True Achievement leaderboard for volleyball. And last but certainly not least, Skeptical Mario wanted me to say, but we were going to say it anyway, but that you are number 1 in the completed games leaderboard for Metroidvania games. And you were nice enough to admit that you are tied with with 76 Metroidvania completions. Amazing job.
That's a lot of Metroids.
All right, in Brags, and we have a bunch. Logic Slayer completed Cyberpunk 2077. Congratulations. Rutarek actually tagged me, so I have to make sure to read this one. He, once again, has 100% completion in the Football Manager series, and he did this with Football Manager 2022 on Windows. Catster completed Art of Rally, which seems pretty grindy. Her last achievement was, I think, like a 6 ratio. Chewie on Ice completed Hexic, as he would say, HD, 13 years after starting it. Jimbot UK finished Grid Retro Enhanced. Majora, interestingly enough, was second to complete Tunic. And I haven't seen Majora around the Discord too much, but he definitely was in the Tunic room and talking to us about it. So that was pretty cool. But second overall to complete Tunic. And I believe they said whoever finished one seemed to have a head start. I was maybe using some guides, and Majora claims to have not used any outside help. So Redemption Denied did a cute thing and reached a gamer score of 3141592. Unfortunately, he did it on March 19th. But the sentiment was well appreciated by everyone who saw it. Speaking of Chip and Elden Ring, he did complete Elden Ring, and he did it with a time of about 66 hours. Not to be outdone, well, yes, to be outdone, Drunken Monkeys completed it and has an astounding 173 hours in Elden Ring. That is amazing.
Wow.
He said he did everything he possibly could. All quests, all items, all random bosses. He said he hasn't been this absorbed in a game world in a long time. He said, legit throughout my plans for 1 million, because this game simply made me not care about achievements. Honestly, didn't want it to end, and now I'm in this weird, what do I do with myself kind of state. See?
Nice.
Gaming can be fun.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
That's a lot of hours.
Yeah, because, pardon me, the TA estimate on Elden Ring is 80 to 100. So your TA goes up to 200, and then it's just 200 plus. So your Gems of Wars and your Gears of Wars and that sort of stuff, there isn't a time count that captures them. But 80 to 100, he basically blew through and doubled that because of having such a great time in a game. That is amazing. That might be the best brag of the week.
I'd love to hear Chip's take on it. Like, did he just streamline it to get the achievements and that's still 60 plus hours? Like, I wonder. But congrats to you guys. And last but not least, we apparently missed a brag from a week or two ago. Neo21, our resident Vayner person, hit 1 million TA on March 12th. Sorry,
awesome.
We did not read that. But you are being spotlighted, sir. And thank you for your monthly Vayner of the month thingies.
Once again, we don't always read every milestone that comes across, especially with TA score. We haven't read TA score for a while. But if you find anything that you think is brag-worthy, take it to the brag camp and tag L. There's a good chance he'll read it. And we will try to do that in the future. Well, guys, that was a show. You've completed level 191.
All right.
Yay.
All right, then. So if you'd like to follow us on Twitch, we are Twitch TV AH101. On Twitter, we are Achievements 101. And that's where you send our Twitter tweets, as Fufu would say. On Discord, we are discord.io/AH101. On Patreon, we are Achievement Hunting 101. And on YouTube, we are also Achievement Hunting 101. I want to take a moment to thank our patrons, our Patreon patrons. This show is not possible without them, without their assistance. They get a couple perks like being able to answer questions and have those questions read. A lot of times we'll go back and we'll ask them things about, hey, what do you think about this for the show? And it's just one of the perks that we get. We also have a special patron chat channel where we can talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. You never know what's going to happen there. If that sounds good to you, you'd like to help out the show, go ahead and check out Patreon and see what works for you. Once again, thank you guys for having us and for listening to us. And we will catch you next week. Bye-bye. Oh, class dismissed.
So long.
And the balcony is closed.
Nice.
Hello and welcome to a brand new segment that we are calling the Master Raters. In this segment, we're going to be talking about how we rate our games. I'm Chewie on Ice, and joining me is Mr. Vulgar Latin.
Hello.
And Madam Matrarch.
Hello.
So as I mentioned, this segment is all about how we rate our games. And actually, there's been a lot of discussion recently in the Discord about game ratings in general, and it was a podcast question recently. But you'd be surprised to know that actually that didn't inspire this segment. This segment has been brewing for a very, very long time.
Yeah, we'd been talking about it since, like last year? Somewhere in there?
We can screen cap some Discord images with dates and times to prove that we did not just conceive of this because Elden Ring happened.
Yeah, but it just seemed like that kind of propelled us into action a little bit. We went from kind of generally kind of talking about it to being like, oh, yeah, we should probably actually do this thing. It's a hot topic. So yeah, Master Raters is what we're calling it. And basically each episode, we're going to focus in on one rating, going from 0.5 all the way up to 5 stars. So we're using the TA standard rating system. So each episode will be another 0.5 stars up. And we're each going to talk about what that rating level means to us personally. Why do we rate a game as a 0.5 or a 3 or a 5? And then we're going to have an example of what a game in our collection that we put at that rating, kind of to show what we mean by that rating system. And then maybe we're going to talk a little bit about some of the community ratings as well. So I've gone into all of our patron and staff game collections and pulled out some examples of how you guys rate your games according to whatever we're talking about. Sounds good?
Sounds excellent.
That's great.
I give that introduction a 4.5 out of 5.
Well, you can't have a 5, so to me that is perfect.
So, yeah, well, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 7.
Oh, boy.
Episode 1 is going to be right at the bottom, right at the dregs. We're scraping the barrel here with our 0.5s. We can't have 0. We can't be any lower. 0 is not possible unless you choose to not rate games because they're so bad. So why don't we kick off by Michelle? Why don't you tell us, what does a 0.5 mean to you? What is the absolute worst?
Okay, so an absolute worst where we can give it a rating, right? Because if 0.0 were a thing, right, that would be completely unplayable, it's broken, it just doesn't work, right? I think that's probably a consensus opinion.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
0.5 is, just a step above that. Like, it can be playable, but it's not particularly good at anything that it's trying to do. And so much so that it's almost offensive at how badly it does the things it's trying to do. At least that's how I view it, which is why I have so seldom and in fact only once given out a 0.5 rating.
So not just bad, offensively bad.
Yes. Yes.
So what game is the single game that you would think is deserving of a 0.5?
Well, can I tell 2 little quick stories first? What I promise they're like 2 sentences each.
Just be prepared for us to rate your story.
That's okay. That's what this is all about. You can't become a master rater without practice. So
I practice a lot when I'm alone.
Insofar as 0.5s, when we first talked about this segment and we decided this was generally going to be the structure, off the top of my head, I was like, I wonder what I've ever given a 0.5 to. I know it's not much because I tend to like to think positive about my games. And the only game I thought I had given a 0.5 to, but I didn't, and I won't go into why now, is Dead Island. Because I did not like that game very much. Exactly. But I did not. So we don't have any cause to talk about it today. So again, no further details. And then at some point when I was explaining to Elle, like, oh, this is a segment we're going to be recording. I've only actually rated one game a 0.5. And he went, was it Yaris? No. So again, no details given as to the whys. Maybe those games will come up later, but just wanted to throw those out there that we have these impressions of how we view things, and sometimes time sort of modifies how we feel. But my one actual game on TA that's rated a 0.5 is a little gem in the Z2Z community, at least back in the day, if you're familiar with that, called Turtles Quest. Yeah. Have either of you had any experience with Turtles Quest at all?
I have never had the pleasure.
Yeah, I'm sorry to say I've never had the misfortune either. I've heard of it. It's one of those legendary, terrible, so bad it's almost good games.
And that's possible. So it was a Windows-only game that I believe was developed by maybe a father and son, or the father developed it for his child or something like that. There was kind of a cute story behind the game. But to my earlier point, it was basically unplayable to the point where I couldn't do pretty much anything. Now, it was noted for being pretty easy. It's only got an 1125 TA score for 1000 TAD. It's a 1 to 2 hour game. According to True Achievements, I played it for 34 minutes, and that's because I couldn't do anything. The game stuttered and stammered so bad on my laptop that I couldn't do very much. So I started it, and I thought, okay, that's okay. I'll come back around to it, except for that at some point, the game got pulled from the store and then was re-uploaded, but with no more achievement support. So it's done.
You mean it failed to pass Microsoft's rigorous quality control process? They said, "Oh, this game is so bad it doesn't deserve achievements."
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, even the lead review on TA, when you look at the game page, the first sentence is usually what they feature, and it says, "This is absolutely without doubt the worst Xbox Live enabled game of all time." So good news for Turtles Quest, it's no longer Xbox Live enabled, so it has a whole other realm to conquer.
The thing is, with the games that are out these days, it would probably nestle quite nicely amongst quite a lot of the not so great games out there. Or is it just so bad? Even the people who complain about rats and zits and all of that stuff, is this another level?
Well, that's the caveat I want to give the game, is it's possible that my hardware was somewhat at fault. That maybe, because this was not the Surface I use currently, it was a previous one that I'd received from someone else as a tech upgrade when they were moving on to new ones. This was some time ago. And it's possible, again, that it was just my laptop, because I'm trying to be generous. But I don't think so.
You kind of expect a single developer amateur indie game to not be made to require the most advanced technology to play it.
Kind of hope it just runs on a toaster. If you would come back and said hey, Fallout 4 just didn't work on this laptop, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. But a game called Turtle Quest made by a single dude.
Right, and again, I could be incorrect about that. This is just me working off my memory. I probably should have done more research about the game itself. But, I mean, it does say that it works. It needs to be on a 64-bit operating system, so it required more than 32. So I guess it was ambitious or something. I don't know enough about the tech to understand it. But what I do know is I ran around the game for a half hour, and in that half hour, I did get achievements. So it wasn't like I got nothing out of Turtles Quest. I did get about half the list done. But I'm stuck there forever and ever and ever. In my head, the only game I can think of that's even remotely comparable, but I didn't play it, which is why I don't have a rating, is I think there was another Windows 8 game called Disney's Underwater Treasures or something. It was like a Little Mermaid, seek and find kind of game. Mm-hmm. And it came out with 3 achievements, and it was supposed to have DLC that had lists activated, but then the DLC never came out. So it's another thing where it just is permanently locked. And off the top of my head, I know there are other things that have been discontinued for server reasons, but where the entire list is just gone.
So does that factor into your rating at all? So if you had managed to get through the game and complete it, and if it had maybe not been delisted, but it was still the steaming pile that it is, would you have still given it a 0.5? Or does the fact that it got pulled and relisted without achievements, does that kind of lend an extra
twist
couple
the
of
knife
notches off the star rating?
That's an excellent question, because I think it is telling that in thinking of a 0.5 game without having looked at what I rated a 0.5 historically, the fact that this game didn't enter my consciousness at all probably means that again, mostly the biggest problem for me is that I really couldn't play it. it stuttered really badly, so I couldn't really do very much, and the game was practically unplayable. So I think the achievements do factor in somewhat negatively, but I don't think when I gave it a 0.5 that mattered, because I don't think the achievements had been deactivated yet. I just think that I wasn't enjoying it. And that's, as we talk more about ratings and what they mean, I think for a lot of us, ratings exist in sort of two spheres. There's the rating I would give it if I was writing a review for it for a website or something like that, and the rating I would give it based just on how I felt about the game. And those might be different. I think in this case they'd be similar because, again, lack of playability. But I don't think the achievements or lack thereof factored in. But as I'm talking about it now, with the benefit of having that knowledge, it does factor in.
Interesting. Very interesting.
But that's it. I mean, 1.5, I've had like 1,100 games on my tag. I have not rated them all. And again, I'm sure that is something we will discuss at more length at some point, like why we've chosen to rate some things or not. But out of 1,100 games, the only game to have gotten a 0.5 being this one, that's okay. That's not a bad ratio of playable games.
But you should see the ones.
Oh, that's next time. Next time.
It's 1,098 ones and just 1.5.
And Psychonauts 2 with a 5.0, and that's it.
That's it. That's all you got.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because I'm quite rigorous about my rating. Every single game that I have completed has been rated, and every single game that I consider kind of done with. So, like, I've done the storyline, I've done most of the achievements. Maybe I haven't completed yet. They have also all been rated. So I'm quite rigorous in making sure I rate everything. But looking at people's collections, that is not true of a lot of people.
Well, I do have some commentary on that, but I think that commentary will actually be better served if I wait until we get to Devin's turn at this round table, because it kind of fills in with some of what he might be talking about. So I'm going to save some of that commentary.
There's also a whole probably other episode of the unrated and why we didn't go for that.
Oh, absolutely.
So what that means to us. So yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to step in there because I feel like it's a natural kind of segue to go from your single 0.5 rating, Michelle, to my single 0.5 rating.
Y'all are lucky.
I'm quite a... Yeah, I mean, it's not that. I mean... So, so the conversation has gone recently on the podcast and in the Discord or the debate that can you have a perfect game? Can you have a 10 out of 10 or a 5 out of 5? And some people say it's not possible because nothing is perfect. Other people say, well...
Just Corey's.
Yeah,
let's just call it what it is.
Some people. You people.
That's a rocker and my like ninth grade English teacher that are telling me you can't have a perfect score.
And other people say, well, look, 5 is just what it means to you. This is the best game or one of the best games you think is possible. You're not saying it's perfect. You're just saying it is an exemplar of the genre or, your feelings at the time. And if you say nothing is a 5, then you may as well say 4.5 is a 5 because that you're saying that one is your best version of the games. Anyway, it kind of does work for me, though. But on the flip side, I've got lots of 5s and I'm quite a generous rater. And the worst I had ever rated a game, and I've been rating for years, was always a 1. And I don't have even that many 1s. I'm quite kind on people, on developers. And this is kind of because I've always taken the perspective, and it's true of films and media in general, in that I'm just always hugely impressed that someone created something and put it out there and people got to consume it, play it, watch it, whatever it is, because that is a huge effort. And it's something that millions of people have tried to do or wanted to do and not been able to do. So the fact that someone got over that line, to me, says, great job, well done, you did a thing. Now, it may be a terrible thing, and if it is terrible, I'll give it a 1. But I feel like there's something in the back of my head that always says, but I don't want to go lower than that because I'm just impressed you got there. I'm impressed you did that thing. And it feels mean-spirited to go below that level.
Okay.
That was until
But wait.
I played a game last year called Another Dawn. And I have actually spoken fairly extensively about this game on level 146. Wakapeil and I, having seen it on sale and being quite fans of weird, not very good, not very much played, low-rated games, decided we would both play it and then talk about it on the podcast.
Those are all adjectives that really sell a game to somebody.
Yeah.
I can't imagine why this isn't a million seller when you put all of those words in front of it.
I'll buy 10.
It's true of films. I love terrible exploitation, poorly made rip-off B movies. I just love them. They're so bad they're good movies.
Okay.
But usually that's because there is an entertainment factor in their badness or their attempt to be good whilst being very, very bad. And yeah, if you want to hear me talking very extensively about this game, go to level 146. But I will give you a summary, and I'll tell you specifically why it's a 0.5 and not a 1 alongside all of those other games. So Another Dawn it's a first-person shooter. It's a Far Cry ripoff made by, I think, a very small development team, but one that has made other games that are similarly awful, like Alison's Diary Rebirth.
Ugh.
Yes, okay. But even that wouldn't get a 0.5 from me. It is probably the most generic game I could possibly imagine. It's like they basically made a game out of stuff that they got on a Humble Bundle, I think. So they took all of the most generic, island adventure assets and just threw them into a game without, I think, any due thought or consideration to how things looked, where they should be. It's the laziest game I can possibly imagine. Every single element of that game is just, I think, a that'll do mentality. Yeah? So, let's just make an island. That'll do. Let's just shove some buildings over there, a beach over there, some boxes over there, and some baddies over there. That'll do. Oh, let's put some guns in. Okay, let's just get some generic guns and some generic gun sounds that sound really awful. That'll do. Every single element of it is just, lazy, can't be bothered, let's not try very hard. And even that wouldn't make it a 0.5. There are plenty of games like that. There are plenty of games that kind of seem a bit like, a bit lazy, a bit barely thought through. It's also extremely glitchy and extraordinarily buggy and basically broken. Every single mechanic in the game barely functions, from stealth and sneaking to shooting. The AI can somehow spot you from literally 100 miles away. And it has a survival mechanic that serves literally no purpose in the entire game. It is so poorly thought through. You could take the entire thing out and the game would benefit from it, right? They've added in a survival mechanic that makes the game somehow worse. It's the core. It should be a core element of the game. It's a survival game, but all it is sometimes you might have to drink some water and sometimes you might have to eat some food, and that's it. There's nothing more to it than that. And you just end a level and it resets anyway. It's pointless. When I played this game, and it's an easy game, it's something you can do in 1 to 2 hours, I had to replay the entire game because in the last level, the game forgot that I had a key card that I needed to progress.
Oh, no.
And there was literally no way of being able to go back and get it. I had it, and then suddenly I just didn't have it anymore. I couldn't reload an earlier save, so I had to replay the game from the beginning.
Oh, no.
So, okay, and that could have made me go, I'm throwing it in the bin, it's a 0.5. I probably still would have just given it a 1. But everything, all things considered, I got this sense throughout the entire game of just building resentment towards the developers. Because, like I said, when somebody makes something and they put it out there and they get it across and people enjoy it, or they hate it, or whatever it is, I still think, yeah, job well done, you tried a thing, you made a thing. But in this case, I just feel like it's a cash grab. I feel like they deliberately went out of their way to make something that was lazy and barely functional and just put it out there to make some money. And the reason I think that is because they have the gall to put this short 1 to 2 hour game that is the ugliest, barely playable, dysfunctional mess of a game at $20.
Yikes.
Okay? Like, if they had put this game across at the $5 price tag it deserves, alongside so many other, terrible indie games, it would have got a one alongside so many of them. But the fact that they have the gall to put such a broken, lazy, ill-considered game at that offensive price tag, that is what, in my mind, gives it a 0.5.
Wow.
It's what you said. A 0.5 is something that is offensively bad. Mm-hmm. And to me, that takes it from being bad to offensively bad.
So would you say that the price of a game matters or factors into the rating that you would give a game?
Ordinarily, I probably wouldn't even have thought about it, and I wouldn't have even noticed. For this one, it stood out to me. Because I've played a lot of indie games, and I've also played a lot of overpriced indie games. But I don't remember any being quite so bad and also quite so relatively expensive. It stood out to me. So yes, in this case it did. Maybe I'm being over harsh. Am I being over harsh?
No, and that's we're going to go back to this over and over again, but at the end of the day, reviews are subjective. There are certain objective measures you can use to help you come up with a number. Yeah. There's always going to be that intangibles wiggle room that eventually solidifies what your final say is going to be.
In summary, my takeaway is, how dare they think that this game that they made is deserving of that price tag? Because they can't have even tested it. It is so broken from the very first minute you play it. And they would have known that because they must have, played it themselves, I'd imagine. And they would have thought, it's broken, it's terrible, it'll do. Let's put it out there for $20 and see how much money we get. That's literally the conversation I think they had.
Yeah, I mean, I got to say, I remember vaguely a discussion about the game because, like you said, you spoke about it on the podcast, but that was already 9-10 months ago. It was some time. And otherwise, there was nothing about this game in my consciousness. So when I pulled up the game page on TA to kind of review it and look at what it is, I cannot think off the top of my head. I am sure it exists. But I don't know that I've ever seen a game where the average rating from the community was below a 1.
Yeah. It is one of the lowest rated games. So I'm not alone in my disdain for this one. It's a 0.77. Unfortunately, the ratings sorting in TA is broken. Mm-hmm. Right. So you can't actually sort by rating to see all of the games at a certain level, and if it is truly the lowest. But I have a feeling like this is right down there. Must be.
Now, it sounded like, Devin, you've played Allison's Diary.
Oh, yeah.
And Chewie, have you played it as well?
Yes.
Okay.
I tried to. I haven't completed it.
So,
it's terrible.
Okay, so I kind of had a question for both of you. Now, Devin, since you've played the game, but you have not played Another Dawn, are there things that sound sort of similar?
Yes.
Like, you get that sense?
Yeah, this was... Allison's Diary Rebirth was made super cheap. I don't even know if I were I to rate it, I assume I would have probably rated it pretty low because it follows the same sort of like, yeah, all right, we did it. That's fine. Yeah, we made a horror game, but yeah, I didn't rate it. That's a 1.02. And
it's not much better.
It's
probably the lowest average score for a developer across TA, I'd have to imagine. They have a 0.77 and a 1.02. But Chewie, now you said you played, but you said you hadn't finished it?
Allison's Diary, yeah.
Was it just so bad that it hit? Because that says it's a 0 to 1 hour completion.
It can be, but it also features a wonderful mechanic of randomly appearing enemies and instant death.
Oh, good.
So what happens is in that game is you sneak around an area. The first level is a haunted house. The second level, I think, is like an old, I don't know, like a town.
It's a hospital, and then
hospital.
It's a villa.
Yeah, like a mental hospital. So I finished the first level, but what happens is enemies will appear suddenly and you have to shine your torch on them to kill them. But they can also appear behind you.
Yeah.
And kill you before you've even turned around.
And you turn so slow.
Yeah. So I played the first level. I completed the first level after, I think, more deaths than I could care to count. Certainly more than an hour's worth of playing it. So then quickly. And then I think the second level I got about halfway and then died and then just threw it away. I will come back to it. But
Okay, so have you rated it yet?
No, I have a rule that I will only rate things once I've got a certain amount out of them.
Okay.
So completed them, as it were.
So now that we're here, though, and I am talking about it, we will, 0.5 on that one.
but like even if you pressed me to a rating, I probably would still give it a 1. For a couple of reasons. One, it's half the price of Another Dawn, so they're not being greedy, as greedy anyway. And the other is that they make an attempt in that one at atmosphere and I guess some kind of storytelling. I think it's fairly nonsensical.
It's the best story that Google Translate could pump out.
Well, that gets to the crux of my question: is where would you place that game and why would that get the nod over over Another Dawn? But it sounds like you already got to that.
I think in the same way that potentially the game Turtles Quest being unplayable and delisted for you, potentially affecting your choice, the price point for me is what tips Another Dawn into the 0.5 because it's just greedy.
Yeah, that's fair.
That sums it all up. So now I've got that out of my system. Devin,
yes.
What does 0.5 mean to you, and what game do you think you want to talk about to represent that rating?
So unlike you guys, I actually have a lot. I have a list actually of 0.5 games. So 0.5 games are aggressively bad. And it's interesting that you brought up, I was kind of waiting for this, that they did it and they tried and they released it, because in my opinion, that's great that you did it and you tried. And if you did it for free, I would be much more lenient to you. But as soon as you're starting to charge money for your stupid glitchy mess is the moment that I start really because, it's hard times, Daddy. We gotta get, money is hard to come by, for some folks. I used to watch this comic book reviewer, and he would say that, every comic book might potentially be someone's first comic book. Mm-hmm. So you have to treat it as though somebody is just getting into it and they don't know. And think about how some of these games would make that person feel if they were the first person to get it. So a lot of my list here is just mountains of trash from when I used to just do broken in one way or another. Ugly would be a good, there'd be a lot of really ugly looking games with terrible sound, terrible story, just every, there's no reason for you to do it if it wasn't for Gamerscore. There's no reason for you to spend your money on that. There's better things for you to do, except there's one game on here that is different. One of these things is not like the others, and that is Conan Exiles.
Conan Exiles is a real game.
That's an actual
very
game.
Much so.
It is an actual, honest-to-God thing that people spent time and...
You just don't like digital boobies.
Well, that's actually didn't work.
Surely that gets an extra star point.
No, it didn't work. Otherwise, it probably would have. But I tried. I legitimately tried. I was like, well, I want to see some digital boobies. None. And I like giant boobs. That's why I hang out with Elle so much.
So, for those of us who did not play Conan Exiles and are just working on inference here, I'm guessing there was some kind of code or Easter egg or something you can do to reveal giant boobies in the game. Is that what you're all referring to? Or
you just start out buck naked.
Okay.
But they gave you in the console versions after a while, because people were getting banned on Mixer and all kinds of stuff because nudity. They were just like, okay, you can have this. because you start out like, well, you have literally nothing and you're naked and you're on this strange land, survive, with very little like kind of knowledge of what you're supposed to do or anything like that. Honestly, it's also grossly overpriced, doesn't work particularly great. Mostly this was a lot of protest too at the cost of that DLC.
Okay.
Which the whole thing is just supremely expensive. It's a genre that I don't like. It's that survival genre where you and I presume other people can be board together as a group. So you and all of your friends as a collective. And it's like basically you make like a server and you can start surviving and make your own little camps and whatever, which sounds fun, except as I found out, because I tried playing this a little bit more legitimately, it doesn't do that.
So I'm kind of with you on that because my good friend Lego Head is a big fan of survival games and also Fluttery Chicken actually, and they're both like going quite high on the survival leaderboards and they play any survival game, and they've persuaded me to try a few as well, and I am not a big fan, but for a very specific reason, and that's because a lot of these survival games, these big survival games, your Conan Exiles, your Arcs, they do not play nicely on a console because they are death by menu overload.
Yep.
And systems, so many systems within the game of like, oh well, you've got to do this and you've got to think about this and you've got to plan this and you've got to manage this, and here's 10,000 menus that you have to scroll through to do all of those different things. And to me, if I'm going to play a game like that, it's got to be on a mouse and keyboard. And even then, I prefer simplicity, and I'm a big fan of like a nice, clear, clean user experience. That's why I really like how the new Assassin's Creed games basically have like no HUD elements at all. I just think it's a much more immersive experience. So it's a big put off to me that if the first thing I see in a game is a million menus and a million different systems that I have to try and balance and remember. So I'm kind of with you on that. I probably wouldn't rate them as a 0.5 as a result.
But wait, there's more. Optimization, because while the game does look fairly nice, it's over 100 gigs to download that game on a Series X. I don't understand why it takes that long. I don't understand why the load times are that long. And even when it makes a server, because I tried with some friends to make a server, it binds you to the host of the server so you can't explore too far away. Otherwise, it teleports y'all to the same spot, which seems antithetical to a whole survival experience.
Yeah, that's messy.
It's very disorientating to try to do all of that. It made me so mad. And for the princely sum of, like, I think $120 on sale, you can get all of that. I only just paid for just the DLC, just so I could complete it, which was another thing that kind of stuck in my craw, that they made like a $25 DLC out of nowhere.
Years after they released it too as well. So
right.
Which
that I remember hearing about.
A lot of people had done that game when it was a free-to-play weekend, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then, a few years later, they were like, have some DLC.
Which is a map. It's just another map. I don't know what it adds to the experience, so it felt very cash grabby. I never met Conan, 0 out of 5.
Now, I have a question, actually, since we've all kind of had, I mentioned before, these sort of intangible factors that we all addressed. Like mine was the lack of achievements and Chewie with the price. You mentioned specifically now the DLC, that this is an issue. Is DLC something you would regularly consider when viewing the game, or do you just look at the base game and what that presents typically?
Generally, I will look at it as a whole package based on what I started with. So if I started a game and it had a bunch of DLC and I played it when it had that DLC, I would rate it appropriately. If the DLC came out later, I would rate it with the DLC, like the DLC individually. Because TA has a very clunky kind of system for doing that. it's weird to say like, oh, well, this game's good by itself, but once you have the DLC, it's terrible. It's sort of
it's
awkward.
especially tricky now with title updates, because a lot of title updates are part of the main game as well. Like they're additional, sometimes just additional achievements.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's additional content, but if you're playing through the game, it's just kind of seamlessly integrated. So you wouldn't be able to separate those things out particularly unless you came back later and there was a new title update.
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, there's only like one DLC that I've ever rated like super terrible, and that'd be like Mad Moxie for just being trash. But like these are all like aggressively bad games, or I try not to do things out of protest. I do have one that's like, I'm rating this bad out of protest. This is terrible practices. But yeah, Conan Exile's just stuck in my craw for a lot of reasons. It's all like, it's never one major thing. It's a combination of factors. It's like, have you ever listened to accident stuff or like plane? I listened to a podcast about plane crashes. There's never one thing that causes a plane crash, right? It's a dozen tiny accidents that all just sort of pile into it to make a giant mess, and that's kind of what happened here with a lot of these. There's like a dozen little things that all add up to disaster and just a waste of money, time, effort. And that's the 0.5 experience for me.
That's a good takeaway. I like that. A bunch of tiny accidents all piling up.
I think that is fair, but I think in the interest of time, we're not going to go through and read, because we don't want to set a precedent of like, all right, now read all of your 2.5s. That's a terrible idea.
We're mainly going to pick a game unless there's a theme involved with all of them or a group of them, I think. But feel free to check out our collections and what we have rated and what Devin has rated else as his 0.5s.
I had alluded to something though earlier. I'm sorry to derail you a little bit, Chewie. With regard to Devin's 0.5s and a thought I have generally about rating things. So again, not going into everything, but there are a couple games on your list that I've played, and I know I've rated not super well, but significantly higher than 0.5. And these in this case would be Awesome P and Birthday of Midnight. And I guess the question I had is, for a lot of these, and this is for both of you, for a lot of those easy Ratalaika, Zidalon games, they're like, we don't really get to play them that much. Actually, I don't think I've rated them higher. I don't know that I've rated them at all because we spend so little time in those games. Those two are probably not the best examples because they take a little longer.
Well,
but
you beat Awesome P. You do actually beat that game.
Yes. But I'm just curious generally as we move forward, because we're probably not going to talk about those games a whole lot. What is your take? Like, how much time do you need to spend in a game to, I know, Chewie, you mentioned before you have sort of a method you use, but I see a lot of these games that's like 15-minute completion, 2.5. Like, how did you rate it on that 15-minute completion? You didn't play the game. So just what are your thoughts? Like, how much of a game do you have to play before you feel like you're actually ready to attach a star figure to it?
I think because, so we're talking about the ratings on TA.
Correct.
So I think that in my perspective, I have to put it through the lens of the achievements and the completion of the game according to the achievements. By which I mean, the developers have said, this is how much we want you to play of the game in order to complete the achievement list. So I feel comfortable to say, well, if that's how much you want me to play of it, that's how much I'll play of it in order to decide whether I like the game or not, and I'll rate it accordingly.
Okay.
And I think for the most part, unless it's a game like Avatar, where you literally only see the first couple of minutes of the game and you don't go any further than that, most of them, even the 15 minutes ones, I think you probably see enough of the game to get a good sense of what it's trying to do. And I would imagine with those games, because for the most part, it's just going to be more levels of the same stuff, I'd imagine. Unless it goes completely off on a wild tangent and, Daggerhood suddenly becomes, an open world RPG after those first few levels of playing it.
Well, you wouldn't know if that key card you got in level 1 glitched out on you at the very end if you only played the first 15 minutes.
It's true. And I think it's fair to say it's not fair. I think it's fair to say that it's not fair to rate a game based on those first 15 minutes in general. But I will say, through the lens of TA and through the lens of the fact that we're talking about achievement lists and completions and rating games on an achievement and achievement website, that I can rate based on my experience completing that game list.
I think you know when you get there. I think there's a certain point where you just sort of get the picture. I have like your toy on there. I don't know how much time I've put on there, but there, I knew by about 20 minutes in exactly what kind of experience that you're going to get. Especially with some of the bad ones, it's more when it hits me, or when it has to leave me with a really strong opinion. I'm not the kind of person to like, I played it for 15 minutes, 2.5. It has to leave me with something, and I have to have a longer experience. If I complete the game and I'm left with nothing, I'm more likely to just say to not do anything with it, to leave it alone. They have to leave me with something.
I think that's true as well. I think that if I played a game for 15 minutes and it was really, really bad, I'm more likely to rate it a 1 just based on that 15 minutes. But I would never rate a game 5 out of 5 unless I had really got everything out of it to really feel like I could justify giving it the best rating possible, because it's always completely possible that you think this game is absolutely amazing for 20 hours of it, and then in the last hour they completely ruin the ending or whatever, and it just, you think, oh no, it's not quite worth that 5.
Just didn't stick the landing.
Yeah, exactly. But on the flip side, if a game is really like aggressively bad very early on, I think it's easier to say, that's a low rating, and sticking with it.
There's a very little chance to have a second impression on those kind of things too. Like, sure. You'll know, like, when it's bad, you'll know. And if it's like 15 minutes and it was relatively all right, well, then I'm probably just going to leave it be. Even if it was a good 15 minutes, it's hard to give something a 4.
Well, yeah. Unless it's a game, I guess, like, not that I'm suggesting it deserves a 4, but like a game like Refunct, where it's actually designed to be completed in 8 minutes, or less than 2, I think is one of the achievements, and less than 4. But yeah, there aren't many games where that's the design of it, is really to be that small a package.
Cool. So thanks guys for sharing your feelings about 0.5s and the games that made it to that lowly rating. I thought we would take a bit of time at the end here to also do some shout outs to the community. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, I went digging into people's collections to see what gems people had potentially put down at the low rating of 0.5. And there's a general theme, okay? A lot of people have put visual novels. Some of the kind of the rats and the zits that I think people feel quite strongly negative about in particular are down there. Your Toy featured quite a lot, the one you also put there, Devon.
Yeah.
Caretaker, I think you also had a 0.5. That one featured quite regularly down at the bottom. North is another one that people seem quite strongly to feel is worthy of that 0.5. But there's a few people out there who have put some games that I might not expect 0.5. So I'm just going to pull out a couple that stand out to me, and feel free guys to also kind of shout out any that you've noticed. But I'm going to call out Mr. Big L here, because on his 0.5 list, and I'm not sure if it's just because he doesn't know what he's doing, and maybe he's a bit fat. Maybe he's a bit fat.
He needs to be carried
on the rating system. But he gave Halo 3 ODST a 0.5. Okay. Shocker, maybe. But he also gave Red Dead Redemption, the first Red Dead Redemption, a 0.5. And I find that hard to believe. I don't think he's even really finished it. So I'm going to think that must be a mistake.
I mean, I'm going to guess that's to raise eyebrows as much as anything. I don't know that L's done a whole lot in it, and I think, like many of us who participate in Random To-Do List, that's one of those games that sort of suffered for him from appearing and then playing a little bit here and a little bit there, and not viewing it as sort of a cohesive, one singular playthrough kind of thing. I'm wondering if ODST might have to do with the experience of trying to get the Endure achievement, which it's one of those things, if either of you have tried it, where once you finally get it, it's amazing.
It took me about a year of trying.
Right.
Almost every week.
Exactly. The amount of time you put into it to fail. And it's one of those achievements. And in case anyone listening is not familiar with Endure, it's basically you have to fight multiple waves of enemies, and you have to make it through a certain number of waves to get this achievement. And the waves get increasingly more difficult, and you only have so many lives. And the lives are shared in a pool with the party, if I recall correctly. But I think, like many achievements that are attached to something like that, if it takes you an hour and a half to do it, the first hour and 10 minutes are simple. So you're just sleepwalking through it. And then it's those last 20 minutes where it gets really intense and you fail at like 1 hour and 28 minutes in. And I'm wondering if it might have something to do with that part of the experience. Because Halo 3 ODST, I think, for a lot of people is kind of divisive anyway. I don't think many people give it a 0.5. I don't think many people give it a 5. But it's sort of in the middle there somewhere. Mm-hmm. But I that achievement can color you on it, and maybe if you rate it before you got the achievement after a really bad session, he
rage rated it.
Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I also noticed Gears Pop featured a couple of times in people's lists as well. Waka and Chip, and I think Jimbot all gave Gears Pop a 0.5, which I assume is because of similar to Another Dawn, greedy business practices and shafting the community is probably led to those ratings.
I would like to call out Fufu Cuddly Boof, who rated Scott Pilgrim a 0.5, and I'd like to call him out because I played the game with him and I experienced him disliking the game, so I can vouch for the fact that this was not a rage rating. This was not a he's doing it again just to get eyeballs, that kind of thing. He legitimately hated his time with the game. And he was playing with myself, with Elle, and with Prue. So, 2 out of the 3 of us weren't so bad. And he still hated it. Like, he did not like that experience. So, I don't get it, but he was unhappy.
Now, would you say that if he had played the game with anyone else, he might have given it a different rating?
I said 2 out of the 3 of us weren't bad. No, he's not into beat-em-ups anyway, and just did not like the experience.
Speaking of beat 'em ups.
Oh, and Mario, Skeptical Mario, you knew where I was going with that, who rated TMNT Arcade a 0.5.
Come on, man.
And that's just like, maybe it didn't age well. I do understand. And that's something when we're talking about ratings too. Like, do you rate the game based on the time, the frame of time in which it was a thing? Do you rate it based on now? Especially with a game like this where it was a re-release of a classic game. Yes, it was the 1989 game, but this was released, I think, in 2007 or 8, maybe on Xbox Live Arcade,
something
with
like
no
that.
Real modifications or anything. So is it fair then to say, look, we have these other better beat-em-ups now? I don't agree. I think the game holds up, but maybe some of that is just affection from playing it years ago. But those two really stood out to me, and maybe it's just a matter of they're not beat-em-up guys, and that's fine.
It's interesting because there's also quite a few AAA games that people have rated at this low level. So obviously the ones that we mentioned for Elle there, but I don't think I could ever really rate a AAA game a 0.5 because as much as I might dislike a game, there's probably enough good in there to at least give it a middling rating, right? Graphics, sound, production. There's so many things going on in there that would make it hard for me to really put it down at the bottom. Noth gave Dying Light and The Division 0.5.
Yeah.
Logic Slayer gave Call of Duty 2 and 3
I was going to call that out. Yeah, Call of Duty 2 and 3 cannot be that bad. Like, come on, man.
I mean, I remember really enjoying those on the PC.
Yeah.
I liked Call of Duty when it was a World War II game before it became what it is today.
Dude bro shooter.
Well, and these are things where we don't know what motivated people to put those ratings down.
That's why it's fun to call them out and not give them the opportunity to respond.
I don't know if this is practical, but no, we could possibly, if people listen and you want to respond to this and you want to give us a why, we could possibly do a quick shout at the beginning of the next segment to give people a chance at redemption.
No,
not Red Dead Redemption.
Calling them out.
We're
redemption. Calling them out. And we're going to let them stew in their juices. Inigo Montoya and your Sniper Elite 3 0.5. Syndicate 0.5.
Yeah,
Hawkeye Berry with the universally hated Dark Souls
Now, see, Dark Souls is a Marmite game, and it's a love it or hate it game for the most part. But is it a 0.5? I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, that's for reasons you mentioned, right? It clearly has development and has quite a bit of attention and care made to it.
For me, though, Hawkeye Berry's bigger issue isn't Dark Souls. It's the fact he rated both of the Telltale Sam and Max games 0.5. Oh, come on, man.
Come on,
Those games are hilarious.
Well, and then there are a couple things, too, that, like, Eruteric rated Game Room a 0.5, and I get it.
I believe it.
I get it. No,
Yeah.
I played Game Room. I finished Game Room. That's
props to you on that one. That is a big thing to do.
Yeah, that's a gross completion.
But that's the thing. Game Room is totally fairly rated as a 0.5 when you're looking at it as Game Room, the hub that took your money to play all of these other arcade games that were actually pretty fun to play. Although I think some of them weren't emulated so great. So I thought that was interesting because, again, I get it, but it's not really the game itself, because Game Room itself was not a game. It was just like a hub space for these arcade games. And then I also thought interesting that Lego Head gave the Kinect Fun Labs games 0.5 because, again, I don't think that that's wrong, but those were more like tech demos almost, where there are these little like bite-sized versions of different things that the Kinect could possibly see you do. And that's a whole other discussion about Kinect tracking and all that sort of stuff. And yes, they had achievements attached, but these were things, the Kinect Fun Labs games really should have been released as free to play, no achievements attached. Here, just see how Kinect works, I think, more than they should have been released as games. So don't disagree with the 0.5 rating, but find it interesting that that's what they were given.
There's also a theme in his rating that he seems to very much dislike games that are based around media franchises, TVs and movies. Lost, Jumper, X-Men, Eragon, and Superman Returns all got 0.5s.
Lost wasn't that bad.
Lost wasn't that bad. It wasn't
not
great.
Good. It's not bad.
But also Freaky had a similar vibe with his Where the Wild Things Are, Golden Compass, and Wall-E 0.5s as well. So
Chip put Telltale Poker Night. It's just poker.
Yeah, and it's not just poker; it's poker with hilarious characters being fun and hilarious.
But at the end of the day, it's just poker.
There is an annoying achievement in Telltale Poker that is entirely luck based, and I could imagine if you spent hours and hours and hours and hours and hours trying to get that single achievement, that could very much erode your enjoyment of that game.
You got Borderlands stuff.
I mean, I find it more interesting, though, from Chip that he gave Trials of the Blood Dragon a 0.5. I haven't played it myself, but I seem to remember when that came out, like, people were pleasantly surprised by it, not like, this is garbage.
I think he was a fan of the Trials series, and I think it just severely disappointed him, is the vibe I got out of that.
Yeah, because that's interesting. That I think if you're a big fan of a series and a game comes out that you feel isn't justifiable as part of that series, like it takes away from the series in some way, I think you're going to be harsher on it than you might do if it was a standalone thing. I think that's true of like let's think like the Assassin's Creed games. Like if you really, really disliked
like Assassin's Creed Pirates or something.
The mobile game, the Altair game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a steaming pile, but I think it's an extra steaming pile because you think it shouldn't get the Assassin's Creed game name. Actually, I'll tell you what, one game that showed up quite a lot, Forza Street.
Yeah.
So similarly, if you love Forza, you love Forza Horizon, you love Forza Motorsport, Forza Street is like, it doesn't deserve the name. And I think people, and especially because it's a microtransaction fest, and they took the servers down just recently, the whole thing is a mess.
Right.
But I think people are going to rate it even harsher because they had the gall to call it a Forza game.
Yeah, I think if they were Miami Street, no one would have cared.
Right, but no one would have played it either. Sure. And that's
fair enough.
That's a long-standing thing in games, to just slap the franchise title onto something that's at best like a tangent to it, because people will buy stuff with that title that they might not have otherwise bought.
One point I wanted to pick up as well was that going through everyone's lists, some people had no 0.5s at all. Some people didn't rate anything below a 2.
Interesting.
So similar kind of generous raters out there. People aren't willing to kind of drop below that. But if people did have 0.5s, they usually had a few, maybe a dozen at most. Jimbot UK had 37 0.5s. He is not a fan of quite a lot of games. He is a serial rater. He rates a lot of games. So, proportionally maybe it kind of evens out, but I think he's a little bit more harsh than most. He gave a lot of like adventure walking sims 0.5, so I don't think he's a fan of those. Things like Beyond Eyes, Among the Sleep, Nero, but also like puzzle games like Threes, which I know Threes is not the easiest of completions.
It's not that bad.
Impossible, potentially, unless you've got a solver. And did that not get taken down as well?
It did, yes. Because it was part of the Snap thing that was on Xbox.
They fixed the Snap.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, it's possible that factored
removed
into his decision. But yes, he has strong feelings about a lot of games to put them at 0.5.
Well, I looked really quick, and Jimbot has 2,737 games on his tag. So 37 out of 2,737 really isn't a terrible ratio of 0.5s, especially if he is someone who regularly rates most of what he plays.
Yeah.
So that's not terrible. And visual novels are one of those. Personally, I don't rate the visual novels because I've never read any of the text.
Because you don't read it,
Right. I set it on fast forward. I mean, I could have missed the greatest story ever written. I would not know. So I don't feel like it's fair to stick a rating on them. But if you're rating based on things like gameplay, a visual novel has none. So I can completely understand why someone would give them a 0.5.
Yeah, to me, that kind of is partly why I would give it a low rating, because they've made a game. It's like, to me, it's like a speedrun achievement in an adventure game that it shouldn't be there because it takes away from the experience of the game deliberately. Like, it's built in to say, hey, this game we made, don't bother playing it properly. And for me, the fact that they take these visual novels and they add in abilities to skip the entirety of them, just sit there skipping the entire dialogue, even though that gives us a quick completion, I don't think it should exist. I think that the fact they put that in order to say, hey, we made a game, don't bother reading it, don't bother playing it, I think it deserves a low rating for that reason, regardless of how good the story is, because they've said, we don't want you to play it. We've given you options to not play the game.
Hey, your money's just as green, though. They don't care.
Yeah, I don't know, like, the history of visual novels and such, but I know the 360 Japanese import ones also had that ability to skip. And I don't know why that's always been an acceptable development philosophy with visual novels, to build in a skip function like that.
I think it's fair to have text, because they have text you've already read.
That's
right.
fair. Yeah.
Or like branches you've already seen, or ending, or like whatever stuff you've already done, because you might have to replay it for different endings, or you might want to replay it. I think it's fair to have skips there, but to skip stuff you haven't even seen before just to get to the end as quickly as possible just seems, why put that in there?
And see, that's the kind of stuff I don't rate, like the Crime Hoppers of the world, where never read it. Wasn't even there in the room. I just set it to go, and then I went and made breakfast. That's can't rate it.
Okay, well, we hope you enjoyed Master Raters. We will be back shortly with our next episode, which will be about 1-star games. In the meantime, feel free to, if you've heard this segment and you're interested, to defend your choices or share your own 0.5s. The ones that we picked here were from staff and patrons specifically. So if you're listening and you want to talk about your 0.5 ratings or challenge some of our own, then feel free to do so in the Discord.
And explain your rationale, too. Tell us why you would rate something a 0.5. I'm curious to see what other people say.
Awesome. I've been Chewie and Ice.
I've been Vulgar Latin.
And I'm Matrarch.
And we are the Master Raters.
Hello, I'm Wakapeil, and I've checked out East Asia Soft's latest offering, Wife Quest. I can't say I expected much of it. I knew it wasn't a quick and easy completion as most other East Asia Soft games, but KooshMoose convinced me to check it out. Wife Quest is a pixel art action platformer with some very light Metroidvania mechanics, similar to the far superior Flynn Son of Crimson. Backtracking is not mandatory to get all of the game's 20 achievements worth 1000 game score and, for now, 3200 TA, but unless you die plenty and farm enemies and chests for gold as you progress, you will have to replay a few levels to get enough gold to buy everything you need in the shop for some achievements. If you explore thoroughly, you will get almost all of the gold you need, as you find chests and loot enemies when you play through the story. I replayed the first level a few times for gold after completing the story, as it is by far the easiest level, and the easy enemies drop as much gold as the end game enemies, who are much tougher. This might sound annoying as the levels are rather long, but since you are much more powerful and have many more traversal options than the first time you play the level, it is much faster to get through when you return to it. In Wife Quest, you play as the human former soldier, now farmer Mia, whose human husband Fernando is harassed and or kidnapped by horny monster girls on a daily basis. There seems to be a severe man shortage wherever the game takes place. Fernando is the only male in the game. Mia is a very protective, jealous and violent wife who promptly beats up her husband's suitresses unless Fernando calls her off. One day, the monster girls form an alliance to share Fernando between them and help each other fend off Mia's revenge. They successfully kidnap Fernando and Mia runs off to save him. Wife Quest carries a 16+ age rating, which is due to the suggestive themes and the completely unnecessary punishment mechanic. The big busted monster girls are all very horny in the cutscenes, but it is very juvenile, and there is only one instance of censored nudity. The writing is terrible. I admit to finding a few sight gags funny, but the writing is linguistically subpar and very repetitive. Every single scene sees one or more monster girls lusting over Fernando, being interrupted by Mia, who angrily threatens to beat the crap out of them unless they hand back Fernando. The monster girl refuses, there's a fight, followed by Mia abusing her fallen foe. When you have defeated an enemy, you can punish them by doing things such as ripping off their wings, jumping repeatedly on them, or pulling their hair. You have to see each unique punishment for an achievement, but there is no other reason to punish your enemies, and there is only one punishment per enemy type, all of which are present on the final level. Despite the silly premise, terrible writing and lackluster introductory levels, I ended up actually liking Wife Quest. It gets way better after a couple of upgrades. The shield is one of the key pieces of equipment, and it is very powerful. It is a bit clunky and unwieldy, but very important to master, especially during boss fights. Wife Quest is usually not very difficult, with somewhat frequent checkpoints, but there are a handful of difficulty spikes, such as extra tricky platforming sections, and the bosses put up quite a fight and might stump less skilled players. There are plenty of secrets to discover, none of which are needed for achievements, but they are usually helpful. There is only one notable missable achievement. It's for entering the shop after each level, which you'll want to do anyway, as the purchasable upgrades are very useful. There's also one missable for defeating the first boss without losing all your health, but it is quite easy in magic mode, which unlocks after completing the main game, and only takes a few minutes per attempt. If you play defensively, you'll only need one attempt. In fact, I believe you can win the fight by just standing still with your shield up. The shield is not concerned by directions. Even if you get hit in the back of the head, it will shield you from harm. I'd recommend upgrading your weapon, health and magic before buying bags, potions and cosmetics, as it makes the most difference in that order. If you find the game difficult, you might want to grind out some gold by replaying the first level. Wife Quest is a straightforward but difficult completion. If you enjoy a challenging action platformer and can put up with the terrible story beats and very horny monster girls, I would, to my surprise, cautiously recommend Wife Quest for its $8 asking price, but it is hardly a must-play and you might as well wait for a discount. On the flip side, if you dislike difficult games, I would stay away from Wife Quest. As some parts are rather difficult, the time estimate is hard to pin down, but 6 to 8 hours is a likely estimate for experienced platformer players. Considering the game is about very horny monster girls, it is fairly tame, with the exception of the optional punishments. Every single enemy also have massive boobs. Wife Quest is a very horny and very booby game, which I do not mind in moderation, but this game is unrelenting, which I found off-putting. But the gameplay is solid and it doesn't outstay its welcome, if you're good enough to deal with the difficulty spikes. I liked it way more than I expected, but I found Wife Quest's main selling points, extremely horny monster girls, a detraction from the overall experience. Have a nice day, everyone!